So, guys, we're three guys who have never, ever won a sports Emmy, but we've
No.
also never earned a sports Emmy, just like the people at College Game Day. So, I ask you now this very much question: what would be your fake producer name for yourself if you were to get your Emmy for your outstanding work, even though you were ineligible? Jay, what would be your fake name? This is Jay.
You know what? I can go two ways with this. I can go Joey Bag of Donuts, or I can go Tommy Primanti. You pick.
I'll go for Manti. Anthony Strait, what is your choice?
Oh, it'd definitely be Julian Cockwell. I mean, hey,
I knew
never
Julian Kaplan was
underestimate.
coming in.
Yeah, never underestimate the cock. Okay.
Oh,
I have a feeling. I have a feeling we're going to go a lot with that
and with
tonight.
that,
Hey, look,
gentlemen, we
there's
have
a
just jumped the shark.
there's a
Welcome,
playoff game on Peacock. There's gonna be a lot more
welcome
cock
to all this.
jokes this
Welcome to all
weekend.
this. Welcome to all the sports lines, the cock edition. All right, on tonight's show, we have a post-mortem, and it's not a happy recap of the locals this season. And then we go playoffs, super playoffs, uh,
Playoffs.
super wild card weekend. And in this era of youth and exuberance, we're going to talk about coaches that are retired and going on to the next chapter in their 70s. So, okay. But first, we shall start with that little game on Monday night in Ann Arbor, Houston, Texas. If you could tell, it was about 75% Wolverines there. Mr. Brightside was flowing in the fourth quarter. I can't hear your whistling, thank God. In which the CFP National Championship went to Michigan, winning it a closer than it should have been made right in the end to reflect the actual score, beating Washington 34-13. This is Michigan's first national title since the 1997 season. That was split. It's their first undisputed title since 1948. We'll let Jay have the last word. And Jay, remember, we don't want this segment to go as long as the actual national title game.
I'll
So,
do my best.
Anthony, last thoughts on what was kind of more of a dud game than not.
First of all, shout out to my friend Mia who was actually at that game. She big time Michigan Wolverines fan, managed to make it to down in Houston and catch the game in person. But my takeaway from this game, and I walked in on actually came in on the conversation you having. The Wolverines defense, I think was really look, all the credit in the world to the running game and Michigan going back to what they do best, ground and pound and just basically running the football. And it seems like it's like anytime a Michigan Wolverine running back touches the ball, there was a chance that it won't go the distance. But the defense was just all season long, particularly last Monday night, was just lights out. I mean, I talked about Mike Sanistrell last week on our pregame preview for the championship game. Will Johnson's another one of the leaders on defense, and both came away with takeaways in that game. Sanistrell made a great interception along the sideline, and some can't understand figure out how he can stay in bounds and still ain't able to hold on to the football. I mean, I've fallen many times forward. I can never stop my momentum from making things worse. But when you look at all the weapons that Washington the Huskies came into the game with, there was a question that whether that the Michigan Wolverines defense, who had not seen this kind of potent offense all season, were they able to hold up. Not only they were able to hold up, they made Michael Penix's life miserable. He never looked comfortable. He missed a lot of key throws that I'm quite sure he would like to have back, particularly the 4th and 1 when he had a dude wide open and threw it behind him, and Oduz was not able to make the catch. When you look at Penix's numbers, he threw for 255 on 51 passes. So a lot of dinking and dunking. You know, this is an offense that had that led the nation in yards of plays of over 20 yards or more. He only was able to get one the entire game, and that was late in the fourth quarter when it did seem like the game was pretty much out of reach. They only sacked him one time, but they knocked him around. They made him uncomfortable. They had him rushing his throws a little bit, and he was getting hit on every play, on every pass. And you look at and this defense, and I'm quite sure Jay has the stats for the historical seasons. I don't want to take too much away from him, but yes, they're one of only 4 teams in the modern era to go 15-0 in a season, and walked away with one of the stingiest defenses in the history of college football. But you think back to moments like against Ohio State and the defense needing to make a stop. The goal line stand against Alabama. It just time and time again. Jim Harbaugh and the defense came through time and time again, and faced with a challenge against the most explosive offense that we've seen in the nation with Heisman Trophy candidate as good as it get. They really shut them down. I mean, and even when the offense bogged down that third quarter, it was the defense stepping up and making sure that that Washington would get no closer than the 7 points when it was 20-13 at one point. So that was the one thing that stood out for me. Rabbi, me and you was going back and forth during the game, and we were talking about Penix just really not being comfortable most of the night. What did you take away from what we saw in the national championship game?
On Penix, I do think you can blame a lot of it on the pressure that he got. Jay's absolutely right, even though I am a hater and I will always go to flaws first. But I do think there was just a lot of open throws that he just missed during a lot of the game. And I just think that also leads to the fact that he had a running game by him because Dylan Johnson got hurt on pretty much the very first play of the game. So that offense pretty much became one-dimensional. I mean, if you look at it, J.J. McCarthy had 4 carries, basically ran as much as Dylan Johnson did. And J.J. McCarthy had one of the biggest plays of the game, running for, I think, 15 or 16 pretty much while they were down
15.
inside their
Yep.
10 in the third quarter. Just a lot of takeaways from here. Michigan running attack. Where did Donovan Edwards come from? I know he was supposed to be a star this season, but he literally had done nothing since the Penn State game. Back when Harbaugh was suspended the first time, it was starting a suspension the second time. I'm sorry. And what the hell? I mean, 104 yards for Donovan Edwards, essentially breaking 2 easy runs in the first quarter, and then Blake Corum just doing what Blake Corum has been doing for Michigan his entire career. And Jay will talk about that in just a second. And he's going to be a star. I do feel like he's going to be a star on the next level, and he is a power back that you can go to. For Michigan, honestly, from the moment that Jim Harbaugh was suspended a second time, I think you thought this me against the world mentality was going to take place. You saw a great run of 4 games that they had, and honestly, to be fair, there were only 5 games that Michigan could have even considered big games this season, and they passed all the tests. This was Jim Harbaugh's magnus opus.
Magnum opus, yes.
Magnum opus, so to speak. And he did his game plan perfectly. And I hope for his sake that you could have a statue of him now in Michigan, in a place where a lot of people thought he would be run out of town 4 years ago. But Jay, I'll leave it to you, the biggest Michigan fan out there. A lot of good things to take away from this national championship, obviously.
Yeah, definitely. As I said on the last show when we were making our predictions for this game, I thought that with everything Michigan went through this season, and you just referenced it, Rabbi, I thought that they wanted this more, and that was zero disrespect to what Kalen DeBoer has accomplished out in Seattle with Penix and this Washington team. This was the Wolverines team that Jim Harbaugh has wanted ever since he came back to Ann Arbor. I said that running back Blake Corum, who is the heart and soul of this team, came back for one reason and one reason only, this game. I said I just couldn't see him letting the Wolverines lose, and he didn't, scoring Michigan's last 2 touchdowns to put the game away just when it looked like Washington might be finding their way. Michigan broke all the accepted theories on what kind of a team wins these titles. They're just the 4th team since 2000 to win a national title without the assistance of a single top 5 recruiting class. Last year's Georgia team featured 15 former 5-star signees. Michigan's team, 2. Harbaugh built a championship team based on finding talent that fit their scheme and culture, developing that talent and stockpiling experience. The 22 players who started on Monday night had a combined 602 starts in their college careers. This was a 3-season project whose core stuck together and accumulated hard-earned experience that paid off with a title. I said that Corum running the ball behind their physical offensive line would be plan A, and they executed that plan as well as they have since the Penn State game. With 2:23 to go in the first quarter and leading 14-3, the Wolverines had already rushed for 115 yards. They ran for 209 yards in the first half, averaged 12.3 yards per rush, highlighted by those two Donovan Edwards touchdown runs of 46 and 41 yards, which were the second and third longest touchdown runs in CFP championship game history. Corum finished with 134 yards on 21 carries, 6.4 a pop. Edwards had those 104 yards on just 6 carries, 17.3 a carry. They're the first 100-yard rushers in a CFP title game since Derrick Henry in 2016. Quarterback J.J. McCarthy only needed to throw 18 times. He completed 10 for 140 yards. Think about this, guys. Washington had 301 total yards of offense. Michigan ran for 303 yards. Anthony talked about the Wolverines' defense. They came into the game ranked number 2 in the nation in passing yards allowed per game. They held Penix, the Heisman Trophy runner-up, to 27 of 51. That's 52.9% completion for a guy who averaged almost 70. 255 yards, only 5 yards an attempt, 1 score, those 2 picks. A game well below the usual standard of excellence we've seen from the Huskies quarterback this season. The Wolverines pressured him more than he'd been all season, made him so uncomfortable, he just could not get into any kind of rhythm. Jesse Minter's scheme just sent 4 rushers, allowing him to have an extra defender in coverage through a variety of those coverages at Penix. Sometimes it was double coverage on the outside. Sometimes it was a double in the slot. He played a lot of 2 high safety looks to keep Washington from being able to take the top off the defense, which was a well-documented strength of the Huskies offense. Minter threw in a blitz every now and then just to keep Penix guessing and to force the ball out quickly, but mostly he relied on his front 4 to beat the Huskies offensive line, and more often than not, they did. Every time a game or a season seemed to be on the line, one of Michigan's stars stepped up. As Harbaugh said, and here's the quote, when a play needs to be made, Mike Sainer still has made it. When a play needs to be made, Blake Corum makes it. When a play needs to be made, Will Johnson makes it. When a play needs to be made, J.J. McCarthy makes it. Donovan Edwards makes it. Jalen Harrell makes it. Junior Colson makes it. Rod Moore makes it. And here's my final word on whether this title is tainted in any way by the sign-stealing scandal. Michigan won all of their biggest games. Penn State, Ohio State, Iowa in the Big Ten championship game. Alabama in the CFP semis and Washington in the final won it cleanly, fair, and square. To borrow the line from Humphrey Bogart's 1948 classic, Treasure of the Sierra Madres, signals, this team didn't need no stinking signals. Harbaugh's post-game quote about adding this CFP title to the FCS title his dad owns in the Super Bowl his brother owns was priceless. Quote, I can now sit at the big person's table in my family. Whatever happens next, guys, nothing can take this away from him and his Wolverines. It was a long, hard road to get here, but now, for the first time since 1997, the college football season ends with a final chorus of Hail to the Victors! Go Blue.
Thank God you didn't sing it. All right.
Yeah,
We're going to switch.
enough.
We're going to switch in just a moment from college football to pro football as we are letting our guests get in here. Good evening,
Joseph.
Mr.
Hey, Joe.
How are you guys?
You know, I could actually, introduce him possibly once in a while. Here's Joe Tufaro, our friend who did a very good job, if you want to watch our year-end show, talking about why reps deserve more respect. I tried to do that myself. Welcome, Joe, for the first time in 2024.
Hello, gentlemen. How are you tonight?
Happy New Year, sir. How you doing?
Happy New Year.
All
Good to see everybody. I know I'm late with my draft pick, Jay. I'm supposed to. 2 weeks
I
off.
forgot about that. And it's
Oh, that's right. It's become a new year, a tradition for this. Who you got, Joe?
I'm going to hold off till after our segment. And then we'll
And ironically enough, just like Daniel Jones, that draft pick is at number 6.
That's
After a win in their final matchup, shockingly easily against the New England against the Philadelphia Eagles, 27-10. The New York Giants enter the offseason after a 6-11 2023, which is I'm not doing the damn math for the fucking tie last year. Basically 3.5 games worse than 2022. Giants will be on the clock at number 6 in the 2024 NFL Draft. There are some questions going into the offseason for the Giants, like any 6-11 team should have questions, starting with looking for a new defensive coordinator, and oh boy, we'll get to that sometime in the next few minutes, and the future of bringing back Saquon Barkley. Joe, you're going to get some questions, and you missed a rousing hail to the victors before you came over here. So be very happy that I let you on later. Go ahead, Jay. Ask the first question.
My wife's from Detroit, so I've been hearing it anyway. So
There you
Okay,
go.
fair enough. Fair enough.
So my burning off season to do list question is offense focused, as usually is. There are several things on the off season to do list for GM Joe Schoen and head coach Brian Daboll. There are two that jump out at me on the offensive side of the ball, and we know there will be a conversation about the quarterback room, Joe, and I'll let you weigh in on that. But the primary focus to me has to be the offensive line. It's a unit that allowed an NFL worst 85 sacks and a 14.1 sack rate, 26.4% pressure rate, which was 29th, 24th in pass block win rate, forced their quarterbacks to scramble the second most times in the NFL because they couldn't maintain a pocket. Giants from the middle of the pack in rushing yards, yards per carry, and rushing yards per game, all a tick or two below the NFL average, but 30th in expected points contributed by a rushing attack, 31st in run block win rate. When Schoen and Daboll arrived, Giants had one tier 1 offensive lineman, left tackle Andrew Thomas, who was the only Giants lineman to make ESPN's top 20 pass block win rate. But 2 years later, he's still the only one. Whatever the plan was with regards to the O-line, it's got to change after the Giants produced the worst offensive line in a decade full of poor O-line play. Evan Neal was Schoen's, big offensive lineman pick, number 7 in 2022. Yet to develop into the type of right tackle they need to bookend Thomas. Now he seems to become injury prone. He's going to start the offseason recovering from ankle surgery. And I can't see how you can lock him in at right tackle, as overmatched as he appeared to be at times this season when he's able to play. Tyree Phillips showed some potential when he replaced Neal, but now he's recovering from a torn quad tendon. Long rehab ahead of him. John Michael Schmitz had a promising rookie season at center, but the rotation at guard created some inconsistency in performance, in my opinion. Daboll fired his offensive line coach, Bobby Johnson, at the end of the season, which I guess based on performance would seem to be warranted. But as Johnson was one of Daboll's guys from Buffalo, where they worked together for 3 years, and he was handpicked to fill this coaching role. Some conspiracy theorists are wondering if pressure came from above to force Daboll's hand on that. Whether the Giants can coax legendary O-line coach Mike Munchak out of retirement, or look at another Daboll guy, Dave Guglielmo, who is the Giants' assistant O-line coach from 04 to 08 and worked with Daboll for 3 years in Miami and New England, they need someone who can better develop the youngsters on the unit. But Joe, even if that development happens, I think you'll agree with me that upgrading this offensive line, either via free agency or the draft or both, has to be the number one offseason priority on offense for the Giants. Yeah.
Yeah, and they took the step already. They hired Carmine Brasillo tonight from the Raiders.
Okay.
So he is the new offensive line coach. And I think, Jay, if you look back, and it's, as frustrating as it was getting with the offensive line throughout the year, I started to watch it a little closer, as you guys know, as I watch games over and over without the sound on, thankfully, without any of the other distractions. And it did seem to be a technique problem after a while. We understand the job of an offensive lineman is to get to the second level. And I was watching the Ram game, and it was scary that guys would put one hand out to touch like an Aaron Donald and then go past him to go get the linebacker. Meanwhile, Saquon Barkley's going, excuse me, can you block that guy first?
Right.
Could you at least get in his way while you're going to the other level? And you saw it in the Dallas game, you saw it in a couple places where, again, they would take a guy like Parsons and they just stick a hand on him and then go to the next level and just leave the guy standing there. So I think it was a lot of technique after a while. It was what these guys have been being taught. There is some, if you look around the league, there are some guys that were failures here that have gone on to other places and become very solid. And so they're thinking that maybe it was technique, maybe it was what they could teach these guys or what they thought they could. And,
Yeah.
Again, since you don't have a unit that was cohesive, that may have been the difference between Buffalo and here is he had a steady group that grew together and understood all the teachings. When you come in and you keep switching guys in and out, and you're trying to bring them on at different levels, maybe it just didn't work. So Carmine's here. The Raiders offensive line has been very good for the last couple of years under him. So we hope that that's the step in the right direction going there, because you're right. And they've also had somebody, you know, we always talk about having to draft offensive linemen and then having to sign. I guess they've drafted the most offensive linemen in the last 5 years of any team, and still they can't get it right. So I think, again, I think it goes back to teaching. It's going to go back to philosophy. It's going to go back to how we do this. And maybe you do need to bring in, hopefully Thomas is back. Got hurt in game one, and on the fifth play of game one, sort of Aaron Rodgers like, and never recovered. So hopefully, maybe they go out and get one veteran that knows this scheme, that knows the guys. Maybe they bring in somebody from Oakland or somebody that used to be there to kind of anchor the whole thing down, and then you put these pieces in there, and again develop John Michael Smiths and get some other guys playing a little bit better, because all these guys, as you said, if you go back and watch Neil in college, he was like a shell of himself, and it can't be that he was just that bad. It has to be that they tried to change what he was good at. Same thing with John Michael Smith. Same thing with Bredesen and those guys. All these guys were good. They weren't reaches by any stretch of the imagination, and so hopefully this is the start of that turnaround by getting Carmine in here and seeing what he can do.
The second most sacks led up by any offensive line in NFL history with 85.
Yeah,
That's
so
an
you got
insane
to do
number.
something. I don't,
I think once it was said when Joe Burrow was after the Super Bowl, it's like I would use my first 10 picks on offensive linemen, and I think for the Giants, that might be the best way to go. Defense is still another question too, and Anthony will talk about the to-do list on that side.
Yeah, Joe. Defensively, when you look at the Giants, it was pretty much a up and down year. Like there were games this season, like against Buffalo, where the defense showed how good this unit can really be, and then there was games against Dallas when they fell to 2-8, and the team was completely lost on that side of football. But the second half of the season, they played a lot better. The blitzes, the schemes seem to be a little more simplified. And it helped the Giants finish the season on a 4-3 stretch the last 7 games. There are obviously players like Kayvon Thibodeau and Deontay Banks that showed some promise, and a foundation for building. But there's also some key guys that are going to be free agents going into the offseason. And my question to you is, looking at this defense and evaluating the talent, just who would you bring back, and what are the steps that the Giants can take to further develop some of the younger players they have on that side of the football?
Yeah, I think Tay Banks showed how good he can be, and he'll continue to develop and get better. He went up against a lot of number one guys and did very well. So I think they got that side down. But then again, you're back to Hawkins wasn't very good. Adoree Jackson's getting older. Are we going to sign McKinney? Are we going to keep Isaiah Simmons? Are we going to keep so I think the defensive side of the ball, Anthony, is more what you said is how are they going to, at what point, who can you keep and who can't you keep, right? You signed up Dexter Lawrence a long time, which made sense. Can you keep McKinney longer? Then, he said he's going to go out to free agent today. Of course, they should, to see what they can get. Can you sign him for 5 years? Can you bring Isaiah Simmons back then? Can you afford to pay enough guys to keep this defense intact? They do play well when they play together. They do play very well when they get pressure on the quarterback. Dexter Lawrence and Thibodeau and Ojulari, when he finally stayed healthy, looked good up there up front. The linebackers are much better this year. McFadden was really good. He played very well at the end of the year. And like we were talking about, Isaiah Simmons being in there and different guys, and of course Bobby Okereke, probably the MVP of the league of the team. So they have some building blocks there. Okereke kind of took over the defense about halfway through the year. They said it was his. He did all the communications. But I think the key is can you keep Xavier McKinney, because he can turn a game around, as he did in Philadelphia with those 2 interceptions back to back. That just being aggressive and knowing he can do those type of things, and that of course frees up the corners to undercut some routes, because you have him behind you. So I think that he's kind of the key to this whole thing, because I don't think you can just say, oh, we have Nick McLeod back there, or we got the other guys back there. I don't think that they live up to his level of play. I think he's a special guy. I don't think he's easily replaced in any way. So I think he's the key to this whole thing. If you can keep X back there, he makes the defense that much better. And then these guys get under a scheme that they can play. And again, Hawkins and Banks just keep getting better. And I think it's promising, at least at that point.
Okay. Now let's get to the fun, juicy gossip in here and talk about the coaching situation. And obviously, defensive coordinator is the biggest question. After Brian Daboll had basically said on Monday that both the offensive coordinator Mike Kafka, who might be interviewing for one of the 74 head coaching jobs that are currently available right now in the NFL, and Wink Martindale would both be back. And then Wink immediately on Monday resigned about 8 hours after. Reports are that he stormed out of a meeting with Daboll after it was learned that Drew Wilkins and Kevin Wilkins, outside linebackers coach and a defensive assistant, were both fired. We don't know if that was a power struggle or anything like that, but it did seem like there was friction all season, although he didn't really deny it, and Daboll denied it himself. So that's the real big question. Offensively, we'll see what happens. I think that's really up to Kafka if he wants to stay there. We don't know about that yet. But really, the question is, on the defensive side of the ball, is this I mean, obviously, it's not a healthy breakup. This is not the way you would break up with anybody else. But what do you think is the next step for the Giants and who to target? I have a name in Antonio Pierce that just seems really, really interesting, but I think he's going to get the job in Las Vegas if Las Vegas knows what's best for him. But I'm sure you have other ideas as well.
Yeah, and not too many more. I think that, I wish I could go up the block and talk to Mark Davis and say, make a decision. Either let the poor guy go or
Now, do it in 5 seconds, please.
Yeah, what's the difference at this point? You either have made up your mind, like what's going to change your mind in the next couple of weeks that that you're not playing anymore. There's nothing more to look at. You've seen what he can do. You saw how he brought the team together. You saw how they played for him. You saw that he actually was the guy that they gravitated towards to get away from McDaniels. The players did that. They went to Davis and said, "Hey, this guy's got to go." And Antonio did very well. So I'm not sure. The only thing that's on the negative side for me with bringing Antonio Pierce in is it going to be for 1 year? Because then he's going to be a head coach somewhere else. Like, obviously, that's his trajectory is now, and now he's gotten that chance and he's done well. So does that not mean that somebody else is going to take him? Or again, is it going to be the Jason Garrett scenario where we all said, oh, he's going to be here for a year because somebody's going to hire him as a head coach, or or he's going to go do something else. So we wish he had left after a year. We wish he had left after 6 games. But, that's the problem with Antonio, right? It's bringing in a guy that's already had that taste, hasn't gotten that big contract yet, that then sets him up that he doesn't care what he does as long as he's coaching football and just does the best position for himself. So I think that's who I would want if without all that baggage. I don't really have any other names that I would say would be obviously there's been some stupid things thrown around with, oh, Belichick is going to come back. And I go, oh, yeah, he's going to become a coordinator after 25 years of head coaching.
Again, there's too many spots available. I know I saw an article that says they should hire Leslie Frazier. That might be a name out there in terms of he's probably not getting a head coaching job again. But again, there are 8 positions currently right now that need to be filled.
Right, and that's what happened. So from the last time we all talked, or last time we chatted on text, was we could only come up with like 3 names, right? That we figured coaches would be gone. We knew Atlanta was going to happen. We knew, Washington was going to happen. We knew that the other 3 had already happened in season.
And then we kind of threw out some names that were like, maybe Vrabel gets fired. He got fired. Maybe Carroll leaves. He left.
Yeah.
So
it's weird, right?
I mean, all of a sudden,
like Black Monday was only 2 names, and we were all looking at each other like, oh yeah, maybe that is it. And then all of a sudden it happened. And the Vrabel one makes no sense to me. But he's gonna wind up in New England, so that'll work out perfect for him. He's the happiest man in town right now that Belichick stepped down. he should go straight up there and go, I'm here. He should just show up in New England and go, I'm not far away. Just call me. I'm ready. Because that's a perfect job for him, perfect spot for him. So again, I think the Antonio Pierce news is almost the one that kind of then starts the thing going, right? Because if that job is open, then what happens, right? Then you got a lot of guys going to different places. There's new ownership there. There's new ownership in Washington. There's a lot of different ideas of where people can come from. Is Harbaugh going to come to the NFL? Is he not? All of that stuff is going to have to take care of itself in the next 4 weeks or so, and see where it goes. But Henderson's also another name that
internally.
Yeah, that wouldn't be the worst idea either.
Neither would Frazier, in my opinion, Joe. I
Yeah.
mean, he's somebody that Dable's comfortable with, somebody who, while he doesn't have the biggest success, didn't have the biggest success as a head coach, he's been really solid as a defensive coordinator. So to me, that one, if you're going to go outside the organization, that's the one to me that makes the most sense. I mean, Frazier wasn't fired. He didn't resign. He just took a sabbatical, and he's flat out said he's ready to come back to coaching. So it's just a question of whether he comes back to Buffalo or,
right. And so is he exactly?
Dable
So
sees
is
if he has the interest in coming here.
Yeah. So, and that's the thing, right? It's because he could go back to Buffalo and they could just say, hey, this was your job. You could, we said you could have it back when you wanted to come back when you're healthy. Or does he want to change the scenery? But is he reinvigorated? Is he ready to go? Or is he kind of still, whatever the deal was? Nobody really knows what the sabbatical is all about. So we're not sure if he just burned out or whatever the story was. And now he wants back in. That's a little tricky. That could be a little scary for guys too. That's going to be a pretty deep interview is all I'm saying is it's going to be long. That's not going to be a 5-minute, hey, do you want to work here?
Nope.
And again, Henderson's a good guy because he's been around the organization. People know who he is. And again, he's a guy on the way up instead of finding one of these guys that failed and now has to come back down. Which is always a little bit scarier, but that's how it happens. We all know we're going to hear all kinds of crazy names for the next couple of weeks. Oh, this guy deserves to be a head coach, and he's going to be a complete failure. And in a couple of years, he'll be back doing what he should be doing, being a coordinator.
By the way, that's Jerome Henderson, by the way, for people who don't actually know, since we didn't actually ever say his first name. By the way, of the Titans situation, I just want to say this. Amy Adams is an award-winning actress who is very good at movies. Titans owner Amy Adams Strunk is an idiot who doesn't know how to run an organization.
Rabbi, when we discuss the Vrabel situation further down the show, I may slightly disagree with you based on some things I've heard and read this week. So
we'll talk about that when we get to it, but that's neither here nor there. Okay, let's move on to Super Wild Card Weekend.
boy.
What
about the Jets?
Oh,
I know that we are prone to forgetting about the Jets when Joe is on the show, but we are contractually obligated to discuss them here.
Oh, I gotta go.
Jets, in what looked like a damn snow globe, broke a 15-game losing streak against the Patriots in their final game of the season. Ending this season exactly how they ended last season, 7-10. They'll be picking number 10 of the 2024 NFL Draft with all key spots coming back. And according to Aaron Rodgers, who had a week, as he usually does, saying the organization needs a complete flushing of BS and called Jimmy Kimmel a pedophile. Oh boy. The Jets remaking is going to probably be like a let's try this again type plan. Jay, we'll start the questions for Joe on the to-do list for the offseason.
Yep. Like with the Giants, offense is my area, so I'm going to go down this path. There is many holes in the Jets offense as there is in a slice of Swiss cheese. So, as Rabbi said, upgrades to a variety of positions will be required either through free agency or the draft. But just like the Giants, I think offensive line has to be the primary focus. Poor drafting and questionable free agent signings have led to a unit that was as bad as it gets in the NFL this season. In week 18, they ran out their 13th different offensive line combination in 17 games. And for a unit that absolutely needs coherence and consistency in order to gel and create the type of chemistry required to do this job at a high level. That's a recipe for disaster, and it showed up in some absolutely awful numbers. The Jets were 30th in pass block win rate, 29th in run block win rate. The team was last in expected points from a passing attack and next to last in expected points from a rushing attack, 29th in sacks allowed, 31st in pressure rate, 20 allowed, 29th in sack rate allowed. No member of the Jets offensive line made ESPN's top 20 pass block or run block win rate lists. Is there anyone who should be locked into a spot for next year? Yeah, but only two. Start with Elijah Vera Tucker, who, when healthy, is one of the best to ever play in the trenches, but his health has been a huge concern as he'll be recovering from an Achilles injury after having an upper body arm injury cut short his previous season. The kicker is that AVT is not sure he'll be 100% by the start of the season. Head coach Robert Saleh did say that he intends to keep AVT at one position next year once he does return, either guard or tackle, rather than moving in between the two as he's done the last two seasons, and his season-ending injuries have happened when he has switched positions. Other than AVT, only rookie center Joe Tippmann should be kept as a member of the starting five, in my humble opinion. The entire left side may wind up being completely different next season. Left guard Laken Tomlinson may be the senior member of the O-line, but he didn't exactly have a Pro Bowl season, and he's a potential cut candidate. He has a huge $18.9 million cap hit. Then there's left tackle Mekhi Becton, who none of us are fans of. He allowed 17 sacks this season. Can't have that as the blindside protector of any quarterback, let alone a 40-year-old one coming off an Achilles injury. If Becton leaves for free agency, I think we'll all say thank you and don't let the door hit you on the way out. Joe, this is a real black mark on the resume of GM Joe Douglas. And with a strong draft class at offensive tackle, Oklahoma Tyler Guyton should be there when the Jets pick at number 10. And the scouting report on him is that he has the agility and ability to play either tackle spot. So is there any way this isn't the number one offseason priority on offense for the Jets?
Not priority, but who knows what they're going to do, because like you said, when they picked Becton, all of us at that point were like, are you shitting me? How do you pick the last guy that everybody had on the board? And you moved up and you were up there to get him at whatever number it was. It was pretty high. Mm-hmm. So I think that, again, they have to make that a priority, but I think, and the way that they do it and can make it happen is, as I think I said it to you, was get rid of all the trash that followed Aaron here from Green Bay. Get rid of Lazard, get rid of Cobb, get rid of all these clowns that wanted to come play with Aaron because we love Aaron. It was so wonderful. And then the minute he went down, they didn't play a lick. They didn't do anything. Those guys were awful all year long. So just get rid of all that trash. Just say, hey, Aaron, all we wanted was you. We don't need anybody else. By the way, did you notice Green Bay got back to the exact same position without Aaron Rodgers? And this time they actually won the game to get into the playoffs. So, did you really make that much of a difference that you had the same receivers, you had the same offensive line, you had the same running game with Jordan Love, and they got wound up in the exact same position they were in the year before? So let's not make him out to be, again, the greatest thing, because he's not anymore. And coming off an Achilles heel, and we noticed the last 3 years Aaron didn't want to run at all. And now he's going to be hurt at this point. Of course, the miraculous recovery. And then these idiots put him on the active roster to stand there for what reason? He goes, oh, so I can practice. So you're going to take reps away from the guy that can't play, and so you can stand there and not move and throw the ball with your arm? Who cares? This whole thing that he lifts everybody's spirits and he's so wonderful. I'm not sure that's going to last through an off season here in New York. No. Just don't forget, he was only here for a month, right? In the offseason, he came late and not all that stuff, and went to the Knicks game, went to the Rangers game. Oh, look, he's a New Yorker. Let's see how it keeps going, because it ain't going well right now. He's gotten, I know he didn't get suspended from Pat McAfee's show, even though they said he did. He just said, I don't do anymore after football. But I'm not sure he's going to really be all that grand to be around for a whole season. And we'll see what happens next year. But yeah, I mean, again, if they couldn't protect Zach Wilson, who can actually run, what are they going to do when they try to protect the guy that can't run and is going to be standing there like a statue? Yes, he's got a very quick release. He's good at getting rid of the ball, but that means you're still throwing it 1 and 2 yards down the field. You're not throwing it 30, 40, 50 yards down the field. So it's going to be a trade-off for them. Thankfully they have one of the top receivers in the league, one of the top running backs in the league. So they have something to build around, but really nothing if you can't fix that offensive line. And that may be more than a 2-year project, which is all you have at quarterback is 2 years at the most.
You
And
have
that's,
one on it. Honestly, you
I
have
would say,
one.
yeah, I would say one, Rabbi, but if they
You
say
really have one.
it's 2, fine. You can think that, but you better start preparing to pick somebody after him. You better find out who the next USC quarterback is next year because he's going to be on your team. Because that's how they go. So
I hope to God USC's success for Caleb Williams isn't too bad. By the way, McAfee, if you're a person that likes to cause trouble and call out people in your own company, and then you said, "I'm kind of glad the Aaron Rodgers season is done," you're a problem.
exactly.
Just saying. Let's talk about the much better part of the Jets and their defense, Ant.
Yeah, we saw that the Jets defense pretty much carried this team all season, and there were times where the Jets defense pretty much did everything they could. In late in games, you see that they particularly against the Raiders, that they kept the team in it, they're well down. Remember the Black Friday game where they pretty much almost single-handedly kept the game kept the team in it, only for the offense to give the game away before halftime. But we know that this side of football is much better as far as on the field. But individually, there were some players that regressed, some that progressed. And obviously, you're nodding your head. You know where I'm going with this one. If you was in the Jets front office, even on the coaching staff, and what would your suggestion be to the team as far as grading these players and monitoring if they're taking a step forward, taking a step back?
I think the lesson that everyone's got to look at and learn from is Philadelphia. Philadelphia last year got to the Super Bowl. They lost on the last couple of plays of the Super Bowl. And what did they want to do? Oh, let's bring everybody back. Let's go out, make sure we sign Bradbury. Let's say we bring guys back who are already going to sign with another team, and we spent more money to bring them back because we want the same guys because they were so great. So you had 70 sacks last year, and this year you had 37. Right? You just can't play. It's not computer football, right? Guys don't play the same. Sauce Gardner's good, and he's really good in certain situations. But after year 4 or 5, he's going to start getting beat on a couple of plays, or he's going to have to start holding. The guy on the other side, all he does is hold people. So you're not going to have the same exact success with the same exact players. And I think they have to understand that as good as this defense was, you need to continue to make sure that you can add depth, get guys that are going to challenge guys, to give them some competition, to continue to be better, because it just doesn't work that way. Like you said, Anthony, some guys take a step back. Some guys have career years, and then all of a sudden, what happens after that? Go back to the Giants because I'm more familiar. Look at a guy like Darren Waller, right? He had one all-pro season in his career, and he's never been able to repeat it since then, and he continually gets hurt and stuff. So you can't just plug guys in with their old numbers and say, oh, look at our defense. We're so great. I go, yeah. And you know what? This might have been the year that they did well if Aaron had stayed healthy, because they could have easily won 3 more games with Aaron Rodgers than with Zach Wilson or Trevor Siemian or whoever the hell, or even Joe Flacco could have won them 3 more games than any of those, than those two guys. And same thing with the Giants, right? If Daniel Jones doesn't get hurt and he plays the way he did a year ago, they easily could have won 3 more games, because they could have beaten the Jets, they could have beaten Buffalo, they could have beaten the Rams, all games that you would go back and say they actually did win. I mean, if Tyrod Taylor doesn't let the ball slip out of his hand on the 2-point conversion, they beat the Rams. They beat Buffalo, except that he didn't call a timeout for some reason on the last play of the game. He ran the ball at the end of the half, whatever the hell it was. All of those things are easy to say. This team isn't as bad as you think it is. And I think the Jets were at that point. They could have easily made the playoffs if they had thought about the minute Aaron went down. They should have gone out and called Joe Flacco, because he knew the system. Right? I mean, it made sense. You don't go back. the guy, you don't go to the guy you just benched and said, you're no stinking good. We got to bring in somebody else. And we don't care if we ever see you again. You can't suddenly week 2 go, oh, by the way, here's Zach Wilson. He's our starting quarterback. After you trashed the guy for a whole offseason and made him stand next to him, made him hold a clipboard to his big brother, that wasn't going to work. And they had nobody else on the roster. So for you not to call Flacco at halftime of the first game and say, hey, you know the playbook, you know the coaches, you know what we're trying to do here. Come in here, don't give the ball away, don't throw interceptions, and we can win because the defense is that good. But I just hope they don't get sold on. Same thing Tampa Bay did after they won the Super Bowl with Tom Brady, right? We brought everybody from the team is going to come back next year. Congratulations. Did you do anything? No, you aren't going to repeat with the same players. You need to bring in fresh blood. You need to bring in fresh guys. So I just hope they don't fall into that trap, Anthony, because they are good. But you need to create competition and depth. And again, someone's going to go down, as we all know, in this league. Somebody goes down every week. And they got lucky this year, right? Nobody went down on defense because they lost the best player on offense. And so that kind of ruined them. But somebody's going to get hurt. And it might be somebody big on defense. You can't be stuck then with no plan B like they did.
Ironically enough, they lost both of their quarters in their biggest win and their best win this season against the Eagles, which is even funnier.
Yeah.
So two things I want to.
Another question.
That was good Eagles, though. We're not talking about it. We're talking about the Eagles that actually had confidence and actually believed in their coach. Okay. I'll just say it right now. No one's getting fired from the Jets coaching staff, but there has to be a problem here when the offensive coordinator who they let go last year, Mike LaFleur, basically retook a whole bunch of young people on the Rams and brought them to the playoffs. And Hackett is not a good year again as offensive coordinator. As Jay has said before me, and I sort of agreed with it. Just never adjusted to Zach Wilson because he was an Aaron Rodgers guy. What is the? I mean, obviously they're going to stay next year, but what are the expectations of Hackett going forward? What are the expectations of Robert Saleh, who, if Aaron Rodgers was not the quarterback of this team, he'd be gone by now.
Both of them would be gone.
Oh, no, they would both be gone. I think we knew that about Hackett, but we definitely would think of that about Saleh.
You mean if Aaron Rodgers wasn't the GM of this team? That's what you mean, right?
Owner. I think he co-owns it with Robert Johnson.
Because obviously he's pulling all the strings, and like I said, that was the huge mistake in the beginning. And if he was good enough, it would have worked. But that's why you have to kind of somebody needs to put him in his place behind the scenes by getting rid of some of his guys that did nothing. He can't defend Lazard and Cobb and the way they played this year at all. So behind the scenes, you get rid of those guys. You don't make a big deal about it, but that kind of puts him in his place a little bit to say, Aaron, we wanted you. We got a top receiver. You didn't need to bring your trash with you. We have a top running back. We'll fix the offensive line. We'll go get some free agents with the money we're going to save from those guys. And then try to put him in his place a little bit of just play quarterback. Just shut up and play quarterback. We got your offensive coordinator, who obviously can only coordinate you. He's not good at. He can't deal with any other quarterback in the world but you. So go out and make it happen, and then we'll be rewarded, and everybody will be happy, and you'll be a legend in New York for winning the Super Bowl. Because if it doesn't happen, they're all gone. If it doesn't happen next year and he retires, they're all gone. So that's their year. They think this year was going to be fun because they finally got the quarterback. Next year is not going to be a lot of fun because if they start losing games somewhere, or if he gets hurt again, they're all looking for work. So that's how I feel.
They might be looking for work during this season because
if he gets hurt again and goes out, or if he just plays awful, or he can't figure it out, or they haven't figured out the offensive line, and they give up 60 sacks, they're all gone. Yeah,
gotta blow it up.
Blow it up now. Honestly, in my opinion, but the problem is,
any other circumstances, we all know this would have been blown up on Black Monday.
Right.
Well, it would have been blown up even more. All right, now it's wild card time. Now it's time for our preview of Super Wild Card Weekend. Now with 100% more likeliness of an older person coming to me this week and asking how they could download something called a Peacock. It's a streaming service, Grandma, not an antenna for your television. All right, Anthony, we're going to start with you. The first AFC wildcard game features two kind of improbable stories. The AFC South champion, fourth-seeded Houston Texans, were 10-7, and oh god damn it, I have to do another tie here. A 6.5 game turnaround from the season before, and they had to wait for the former darlings of Houston and the Titans to do the final work for them in beating Jacksonville to assure that Houston has another big game in their stadium this week. What happened in the first one, I don't know. As for the fifth seeded Cleveland Browns, oh, no big deal. 11-win season in which they had 5 different starting quarterbacks, led by their all-world defense and a former division rival torturer in Joe Flacco, who I think got to 100-plus wins with this Cleveland team. It's true. I think he got him into the 100-plus win club for a quarterback. Cleveland has a lot of hope here. FYI, Cleveland beat Houston 36-22 just 3 weeks ago, but likely rookie of the year C.J. Stroud was injured for the Texans. He'll be back. Kind of in full strength in this game. All that being said, Anthony, what you looking for here matchup-wise?
Well, first off, fans of the Houston Texans, do not take this personally that this is your 6th playoff game in franchise history. And in all 6 games, you're playing at the 4:30 Saturday time slot. Do not take it personally. It's just that you're the Texans, and there are other prime time BD playoff games that's ahead of you. Don't take it personally. It is what it is. At least you got a playoff game. So hey, there's a bright side to that. Even if it is a 4:30 Saturday game. Anyway, the matchup I'm looking forward to is actually the Cleveland Browns defense against CJ Stroud and that offense. And you can't talk about the Cleveland Browns defense without talking about Myles Garrett, who is a video game in himself. I mean, he's literally Mr. 99 at John Madden football. 14 sacks this season, and not even that. You see his pre-snap gyrates where he's doing crossovers, walking up to the line of scrimmage, and I don't know what that's about. But even if he's not doing that, you're on the opposing side of that line of scrimmage. You gotta account for him at all times. I mean, he's the 14 sacks. You look at his overall grade of 73. His overall pass defense. Excuse me. His overall defensive stats, and you gotta think Larry Tunsil or the other side that the offensive line, the Texas offensive line is going to be matched up against him, and his overall grade is 73.5. That's all I'm trying to get out of my I'm trying to speak out. As far as the pass protection, 85.4. I would say that one-on-one is going to be a key matchup. Of course, Garrett does move around a lot. As a whole, the Browns defense has been historic this season. They forced 112 punts this season, which is the 3rd most in the NFL since 1970. Only the Raiders, 1984, and the 1999 Ravens, has forced more punts in a season. They have 49 sacks as a team. Going up against the Houston Texans defense, offensive line that has given up quite a few sacks this season. So that's going to be 47 to be exact. So that's going to be key as well. And when you look at the other side of football, CJ Stroud, he did not play in that last matchup, but since he's been back from the concussion, he's been playing well. Obviously, last week in the game against Indianapolis, he threw. Let me go down to his stats real quick. CJ Stroud had a big game. Threw for 264 yards, 2 touchdowns. That's 75-yard game-winning drive to win the game. But also, you look at Nico Collins, a guy that they had took away in that first matchup. He's been red hot too. Going into this game, since in the last 2 games with CJ Stroud coming back, he's had 16 catches for 275 yards and a touchdown. So that's the matchup I'm looking forward to, and seeing the Cleveland Browns defense and how they contend with CJ Stroud this time around, since they didn't have to worry about him in the first matchup. And yes, I have to bring up Joe Flacco and the season he's had and stabilizing the Cleveland Browns offense at quarterback. He reminds me of the Joe Flacco we saw in 2008, his rookie season with the Baltimore Ravens. And then when they got to the AFC Championship game, he's not doing a whole lot. He's doing enough. and he's not turning the ball over, and he's not putting the defense in some very uncomfortable situations and having to defend a short field. So that's going to be the matchup I'm looking forward to. It's just a simple case of good offense against a very potent, a good defense against a very potent offense.
I gotta disagree with you on the not turning the ball over. He has 8 turnovers in the 5 games that he's played, and it's funny how Joe said Flacco don't turn the ball over. That's the one thing that the Cleveland Browns needed was a guy who would take chances, who actually has an arm. PJ Walker takes chances and is a terrible quarterback, but Joe Flacco takes chances and is a guy who can be very feast or famine, and that's what he's done. By the way, one thing to look at in this game is Amari Cooper hasn't played since the game that he played against the Texans,
It was
where
a
he went for
216, correct?
265, 11
265.
receptions.
Oh,
Only game where he's had double-digit receptions this year. Only game where he's had multiple touchdowns this year. That is a big play threat, and he is someone who I'm very interested to see how he does. He was held out of Week 18 and couldn't play Week 17 against the Jets because it's a short week. All right, let's move on to Jay, who got another bonus and saying the Steelers get back into the playoffs, even though he just wanted that Tomlin record to continue. Whatever. If the so thanks to a 3-game winning streak featuring a renaissance by former backup to the backup Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback Mason Rudolph, the 7-seeded terrible towel boys have earned themselves a trip to Buffalo. Does anyone earn themselves a trip to Buffalo? They just get sentenced to a trip to Buffalo. In there is the 2-seeded Bills, and after being on the outside of the playoff picture in the beginning of December, right where the Steelers are, ironically enough, they have a 5-game winning streak, and that puts the Bills Mafia back in familiar territory, throwing people through tables and hosting first-round playoff games. That's what they do. This is their 4th straight year hosting an opening round contest. So, Jay, what you looking for here?
This is it's pretty Captain Obvious here. I mean, it's Josh Allen versus a Steelers defense that's minus TJ Watt. I mean, as much as the Bills defense has stepped up big time during that 5-game winning streak, and yes, Mason Rudolph has the Steelers offense looking like an actual NFL offense over this 3-game winning streak that got them into the playoffs. We all know that this game will be all about Josh Allen and the Steelers defense. The Bills quarterback is as close to a one-man gang wrecking crew as any player can be in an offense. And stopping Allen will be up to a Steelers defense that will be minus their own one-man gang wrecking crew type of player. As TJ Watt, the NFL sack leader, who the Steelers are 1-10 without, will miss the game with a grade 2 MCL sprain. The fact that weather will also be a player in this wildcard game, winds are expected to be gusting over 40 miles per hour, should make things even more interesting, especially in terms of each team being able to effectively throw the football. Start with the Bills. Allen was as bad as he's been in Week 7 in the Week 17 win over the Patriots, 0.23 EPA and a 53.3 passer rating, but he was as good as he's been, at least in the second half of the Week 18 win over the Dolphins that clinched the AFC East number 2 seed for the Bills. He bounced back from 2 first-quarter picks to complete 14 of 15 for 141 yards and a touchdown, while also converting 5 third or fourth downs with his legs. All of which resulted in a 0.17 EPA and a 101.6 passer rating. The question is, which version of Allen, and by extension, the Bills offense, will show up on Sunday? At its best, this offense is unstoppable, but avoiding mistakes will be huge if they want to make a Super Bowl run. Allen has accounted for 44 total touchdowns this season, 29 passing, 15 rushing, but he's also accounted for 22 turnovers, a career-high 18 picks and 4 fumbles lost. He was 2nd in overall quarterback EPA, 5th in pass EPA, 1st in run EPA, 5th in passing play success rate. He was 2nd on the Bills with 111 carries and 2nd in rushing yards with 524. 4th among all NFL quarterbacks, those 15 ground touchdowns tied for 1st. But as inconsistent and occasionally turnover prone as Allen can be and has been this season, that type of play generally has not carried over to the playoffs. I know the knock on Allen is that he's only 4-4 in the playoffs, only 1 trip to the AFC title game, despite being the focal point of a team that's gone 63-30. That's a 677 winning percentage in his regular season starts and has finished with double-digit wins for the 5th year in a row and as division champs for the 4th year in a row. Everyone likes to bring up the 13 seconds game against the Chiefs, but for the most part, Allen has not been the reason Buffalo has struggled in the playoffs. He's actually been a better quarterback in the postseason than the regular season. Career regular season averages 241.5 passing yards per game, 63.2 completion percentage, 92.2 passer rating, 167 TDs against 78 picks. It's a better than 2-to-1 ratio. He also averages a little over 38 rushing yards per game in the regular season and 0.6 rushing touchdowns per game, 53 total. In the postseason, those numbers go up to 291.8 passing yards per game, 63.8% completion, a 99.6 passer rating, 17 scores against 4 picks. That's a better than 4-to-1 ratio. His rushing yards per game goes up to 52.1. Yeah, he only has 2 rushing TDs, but he spends most of the time throwing. The Bills are hoping this version of Josh Allen is the one that the Steelers defense has to prepare for and try and stop. And speaking of the black and gold, defense has long been the hallmark of the Pittsburgh Steelers, no matter the era, no matter the head coach, of which there's only been 3, no matter the quarterback or any other playmakers on offense, of which there have been plenty. This year's no different. Despite missing several key players throughout the season due to injury or disciplinary action, the defense has been solid. Number 7 in the NFL in scoring. They've struggled on third down, allowing 39.1 conversion rate. That's 21st, but they've stood teams up in the red zone. They only allow touchdowns on 46% of the red zone trips. That's 5th, and only 23 overall TDs in the zone. That's 2nd. Only 47 sacks this year. It's 11th. That's with 19 coming from Watt. No other Steeler reached double figures. Alex Highsmith with 7 was the only Steeler with more than 5. Their 22.9% pressure rate was only 11th. Their rush defense was middle of the pack in yards allowed, yards per game, yards per carry, EPA from run defense, but they were number 3 in rushing TDs allowed and rush success rate at 66.3. But as I said, they're going to have to do this without Watt. The good news is that this season, the Steelers actually have depth at the outside linebacker spot with veteran Marcus Golden and rookie Nick Herbig, both of whom have played well in limited duty. The defense also gets back a pair of key pieces in the secondary as safeties Minkah Fitzpatrick and DeMonte KZ are set to return on Sunday. Fitzpatrick's been out since week 8 with a knee injury. He was a full participant in practice this week. KZ was suspended for the final 3 weeks of the season for an illegal hit to the head of Colts receiver Michael Pittman in week 15. Steelers like to play a lot of 3 safety looks, so having these 2 back will allow defensive coordinator Terrell Austin to get back to utilizing that scheme, which will no doubt help out rookie cornerback Joey Porter, who, yes, he was allowing 0.9 yards per coverage snap as the nearest defender heading into week 18 per NFL Next Gen stats. 4th lowest mark by an outside cornerback with at least 250 snaps in coverage, but he's also allowed 75 yards via penalty. Just another reason the Steelers are happy to have Fitzpatrick back, especially if they elect to have Porter follow Stephon Diggs. Now, here's the problem, and it goes beyond just not having Watt. The Steelers' defense has historically not shown up in the playoffs recently under Mike Tomlin. 3 previous playoff appearances over the last 6 seasons, Steelers' defense has been gouged. Jacksonville dropped 45 on them in the 2017 wildcard game. The Browns put up 48 on them in a 2020 wildcard game. Steelers were down 28-0 in the first quarter in that one. And then the Chiefs went out and dropped 42 points on them in the 2021 wildcard game. That's the one where Mahomes threw for 404 yards, 5 scores on 30 of 39. Last time a Mike Tomlin defense showed up in a playoff game, 2016, when they held an Alex Smith-led Chiefs team to just 16 points in a divisional round win. Steelers defense would have its work cut out for them against Josh Allen, even if Watt was available. As the fan base, including this analyst, often say, we're the Steelers. We never do anything the easy way. This game will be no different. It's going to take a man-up effort from Golden and Herbig, plus an A-plus game from Cam Hayward, Highsmith, Porter Jr., the returning safeties, and everyone else on that side of the ball if the Steelers are to leave Buffalo with a win. A little help from Mason Rudolph, Najee Harris, Jalen Williams, Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, and Pat Freiermuth wouldn't hurt either.
So a few things. Number one, did you see the post from J.J. Watt this week that says, "I'll take T.J. Watt's place. No one will notice"? That was so good.
Hey,
Number 2,
if JJ wants to come out of retirement and man that outside linebacker spot, and there's no NFL rules for hitting it, dude, get up to Buffalo and Mike, give him a jersey and some equipment.
I think he'll be fine as an analyst. Also, Josh Allen is the new Brett Favre. and I did not think of that now, considering
That's
his
interesting.
considering his recklessness with the ball and the tendency of making the big plays. And number three, I want to apologize to Houston Texans fans out there. You've played 10 playoff games in your career. Yes, your 6 wild card games were all at 4:30, but we do recognize that you have won 4 of those 4:30 playoff games. So just note that for your gambling advice this weekend. Funny, Jay, that you should mention that Pittsburgh Kansas City game from 2016. It was old day. Guess what? If the Bills had a December to remember, it was the other way for the year division rivals in the Miami Dolphins. 2-3 to end the season, plus a rough loss in game 272 to Buffalo, 21-14. If we said that going to Buffalo was a punishment, the Dolphins have definitely earned themselves a trip to Arrowhead Stadium, where the defending champion third-seeded Chiefs will await. Temperature on Saturday for the slightly disappointing KC, high of 7, low of -8. Check the weather report this morning. This will be their 12th consecutive game, by the way, the Chiefs have hosted, not counting the Super Bowl, of course. So Mahomes, he don't know road. He might know them in a few weeks. FYI, these teams met in Germany in Week 9. Kansas City won 21-14. That, Joe, is when the ref decided to be a smartass and speak German on his first play before actually going in and calling the rest of the game. So, with all of that said, what are you looking for in the pretty much the Ice Bowl coming up in Missouri?
Yeah, so I just checked the weather. The high is 0 now.
Let's go! Playoff weather!
Which is the number of people that should be watching this game on Peacock, because everybody should say, screw you. We'll watch it in 3 hours on NFL Network.
Well, I already have it, so I'll be watching it as it happens.
Yeah, of course you do. You're also the guy that subscribes to the Atlantic for no reason. So
Athletic, yes. And now, Joseph.
But you know what everybody should take solace in is you could pay the $5.99 and cancel it immediately, and then you get the home, and then you take the month and forget about it. So,
which my very upset best friend is going to be doing so she can watch her fish.
But yeah, no, I've told everybody if they want to come to my place, because I have a streaming box, we don't pay for anything. You can come over here. Don't sign up for it. It's a bunch of crap. If Peacock is such a good deal, why do we have to force you to sign up for it? I don't need to watch 8 million reruns of The Office anytime I want. Anyway,
me and Anthony are WWE fans, so we can think of good reasons to watch Peacock.
Yeah.
I'm sure you could find it on YouTube just as easily. So anyway, I think the matchup. So you guys wanted me to pick a matchup in this game, and I think the matchup is Kadarius Toney and Richie James against the ball. And see if they don't get too scared of this hard ice block coming at them from all different angles at all different speeds, and can actually hold on to it at 0 to -7 degrees. I don't think it's going to be pretty. So think of this. Here's a team that's going to go in from Miami, who's got a good defense, and they're going to load up on the box to stop the running game. They're actually going to see if Mahomes can beat them through the air, because he has nobody to throw the ball to except one guy who you can double all night long. If you don't double and triple Travis Kelce all night long and put a guy on Pacheco, there's something wrong. And of course, you need a spy for Mahomes. But it's an odd thing to think that you're gonna see if Patrick Mahomes can beat you, because that's what he's gonna have to do. Even in the last couple of games that they played, win or lose, if you've noticed, he's had to get into that mode, right, of running the ball himself, of putting the team on his shoulders, trying to dive for first downs. It's all on Patrick Mahomes at this point, because those guys are awful out there. And again, they're not going to get suddenly better in that weather. I can't imagine Richie James and Kadarius Toney coming up big in 0 or -7 degree weather. So I think it's going to be a little ugly. It's going to be windy. It's going to be cold. There's going to be nobody watching on TV. So I can't be wrong. Nobody will see it except Jay. And I'm sure he'll text me all night telling me what's going on. But I really do. I think that the matchup really is the Miami defense loading up on the running game of Kansas City, so that they have to throw the ball more than they really want to. and seeing if those guys can perform, because at this point he has one guy to go to, and we all know who it is, and so does everybody else. So I think that's the key matchup.
And he's not as good as he once was, and I think
Oh,
he's
he's distracted. He's distracted. He has to
he's not just distracted, he's also 35.
he has to
And I
keep
think
looking
that's
up
the
in the
thing there.
booth to see if she's still there. It's like, oh.
I think this is going to be an ugly game. Miami is missing, I believe, 9 starters right now, in some way, shape, or form, or offense and defense. This could be a first to 20 type of game. This could be ugly. I do think the Chiefs are going to win this game, only because of the fact that I think their defense is much better than Miami's defense, and I think Tua has been inconsistent in this type of weather. Never won a game over 45 degrees.
And he's thrown some weird balls the last couple of weeks, even in nice weather. He threw a couple of balls against Buffalo that were nowhere near anybody, and you just have no idea.
The last play was the worst because it was just literally at two men. So I'm interested to see this game, if only for the fact that Anthony is going to make a lot of cock jokes. So we're just...
Oh, yeah. I would say this though. Imagine being a receiver in the Kansas City Chiefs. You lead the NFL in drops all season, and now comes Saturday night, you're going to be catching what is going to be essentially a center block thrown at you at 70 miles per hour. That's going to be look. Jay, you and I, we've been on the offensive side of football. We don't like the cold, okay?
No.
Especially anybody who's handling the football.
You don't like to catch it. I don't like to throw it.
Yeah, I'm gonna say this though. I would give advice for the receivers. Wear sleeves, okay? Don't be Superman. Don't be macho. Wear sleeves. There's a reason for it. Cold skin and a cold football are a bad combination. You can't feel the ball, okay? There's a reason why it's made from pigskin. It's slick, it's cold, and you don't have any feeling as it is. I mean, just wear some sleeves. There's a reason why Bill Parcells was a big fan of that. If you remember, Wayne Quebec in the playoffs against Jacksonville, fumbling 3 times. And the very next week against Denver, he's wearing sleeves. That's why. I mean, you want to feel the football. You want to be able to have some kind of grip to it. And you're not going to catch every ball with your hands. It's impossible under those conditions. You're going to have to be using your arms and probably trapping the ball with your body a little bit. So that kind of helps. And just a little suggestion out there. But yeah, it is going to be a major challenge for anybody who has to, even the special teams, because if the wind chill, the wind's going to be in your face too. So it is going to be a very interesting game to watch. Even if you got paid the $5.99, I know a lot of the Swifties out there is going to do it. But like I said, it's going to be a fun but a very odd game to watch for 3 hours on Saturday, just to see how the teams are able to adapt to the conditions.
Yeah, and I think that the interesting thing for me, guys, is going to be how Mike McDonald adapts his offense.
McDaniel, yeah.
Yeah, McDaniel. I mean, Miami hasn't played in conditions like this. They're if they don't have both running backs available to them, how do they adjust? You know, they're not going to be able to throw the ball around the ballpark the way they're used to doing it this season with Hill and Waddle. So how he adjusts, to me, is gonna be just as important as checking the Vegas over/under on how many passes Kadarius Toney's going to drop. Joe.
There is no Vegas. There's no over/under for that. Just saying. All right, let's move on. Joe, you're good to go after this is done. So let's quickly go to this. The NFC has the 49ers watching by the Bay as these 6 teams wail on each other. The 1-seed life. It's great. The Dallas Cowboys, though, have earned their highest seed in 7 seasons as a 2-seed and NFC East champion. But before they can have a divisional game at home, they have to survive old rival, the Green Bay Packers. 7-seed Green Bay has a 3rd-year quarterback in Jordan Love and a 1st-year starter. And they have the youngest team in the NFL, period, in 6 years. And the youngest team of the postseason in 45 years.
Woo.
They ended the season 6-2, by the way. And if you like passing touchdowns, you got the right game. Sorry, Joe, I'm going to have to do this and give a compliment to Dak Prescott here. Cowboys QB Dak Prescott, number 1 in the season in passing touchdowns. Jordan Love, number 2. Joe, what are you looking for?
I am looking for this to be a miracle game by Green Bay, because if they had played anywhere else but in Dallas, I think they had a little bit of a fighting chance. I don't think their defense is good enough to put up with the Dallas offense, especially in Dallas, where they seem to score points at will. Now, there is a little bit of a blueprint out there now of how to beat Dallas, because they didn't play well in their last game at home, and maybe there's something to that. But, trying to keep the hold of CD Lamb is not the easiest thing in the world. And those guys do have a little bit of a chemistry there. And, even though the running game really, I don't think they use it well. I think they realized why Tony Pollard was the number 2 guy, because he's not a number 1, right? You don't just automatically become the number 1 guy because the other guy leaves. So I don't think that they're all that strong. But again, the offensive line is still good. Their defense is still ferocious. I'm not sure what they can show. I'm not sure Jordan Love has seen everything he's been able to see, and Dan Quinn's really good at playing at doing that to quarterback. So I think he might struggle in this thing. It's going to be tough on the road. I think they'll hang in there for a while, try to take time off the clock, try to run the ball as much as they can, and then try to take some big shots, because again, Jordan Love does have a big arm, but I don't see this. This is the one game that I think could get out of hand. If you look at all of these matchups, I think this is the one that could go one way or the other. It's either going to be close, and Green Bay plays out of their skulls as they have been, and look good against them, or this one could be over by the middle of the third quarter. So I just think that Dallas at home was the bad draw for anybody, the way that they played all year long.
I do think, though, this is going to be a little bit closer than people think, because the one thing I think Dallas could do, if you saw that Seattle game, is they are susceptible to passing. They are susceptible to the long ball, and I think Jordan Love has been very comfortable throwing it to guys who, again, you could just pick names off of the street and basically say who they are, because it's been, again, one of the youngest teams out there. I'm actually interested to see this matchup, but I do feel your sentiments a little bit in this game, but I don't think Dallas is as invincible as they would at home. I would pick them to win this game, by the way. But I do think this is going to be closer than people think, because I think they play nothing to lose.
I think this is the one that has the opportunity to not be close. But I do believe, like you said, they have a puncher's chance at this because of the long ball and because of the pass defense. Again, you still got to block up front, which is going to be the key to this whole thing, to get him time to throw the ball deep. But then that's what I'm saying. I think this is the one that has the potential to not be good.
I agree.
I'll tell you this, guys. If McCarthy loses to Green Bay at home,
he'll resign.
Packers fans are never going to let him hear the end of it.
Now. Bye. See you later.
I don't know if Jerry Jones is going to be able to stomach that.
He might go back. He might go back and hire Jimmy Johnson if McCarthy loses this game.
I will say this: the last game that the Dallas loses, and they will not win the Super Bowl, I will tell you that right now, will be Dan Quinn's last game as a defensive coordinator. He's either going to Seattle or he's going to take Dallas. He's going to take Mike Shep. Joe, you are good to go if you would like, and enjoy the rest of your night, sir. Thank you for joining us on this, and we'll see you as the playoffs go on.
We will see you as the playoffs go on, and I'm sure we will text each other all day, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday.
Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah.
It's a pleasure, my friend.
I'm going to need some rep advice when we get to that.
All right. Take care, guys.
Have a good night.
Have a good night.
All right, so we got 2 more matchups to talk about on this side of the bracket. So, Anthony, you're up next. The good news for the 3-seeded Detroit Lions is, after being tied for the best record of the conference at 12-5, Detroit, for the first time in 3 decades, start the playoffs at home. And for the first time ever, the playoffs will see Ford Field as host. Yes, I know the Steelers won a Super Bowl in Ford Field, but that's semantics.
I know what you
playoff game. They hosted a Super Bowl 18 years ago. Okay, now the bad news. The franchise leader in passing yards is Matthew Stafford. He's now a Super Bowl champ, and he's the QB for the opponent, the 6-seeded Los Angeles Rams. LA ended their season 7-1, led by rookie Puka Nacua and second-year back Kyron Williams. Oh, emotions are going to run high on this game, baby. Anthony, help me find a matchup in this one.
Is the football gods cruel if you're a Detroit Lions fan? I mean, you finally get back to the playoffs,
It's
and
Matthew Stafford.
you make it back to the ball, and you see your ex-girlfriend or your ex right across the dance floor looking as fine as
He's
ever, and it's just,
engaged. He's
yeah.
engaged, or she has a ring on her finger.
It's horrible and cruel. But the football guys, they they spare no one. And let's just say that. The matchup I'm looking at is the two quarterbacks that were traded for each other. For the Rams, Matthew Stafford, since he's come back from the injury in the bye week, he's thrown for a little under 1,900 yards, 16 touchdowns, 4 interceptions in that stretch, and 7 games since that bye week. The Rams were 6-1, and you talk about the weapons he has. A healthy Cooper Cup this time around. Kyron Williams and Puka Nacua, who was just has come up a record-setting season for a rookie and definitely offensive rookie of the year candidate. He's building rapport with Ty Higbee. Remember, Mrs. Stafford made a joke during the off season that Matthew Stafford outside of Cup was going to need name tags to figure out who his receivers are. But he's done a great job of building some chemistry, and as a result, the Rams really took off in the second half of the season and getting back to the playoffs. On the defensively, they played the most zone coverage of anyone. They don't get the outside of Aaron Donald. They don't pressure the quarterbacks much. They're number 29 in the league in quarterback pressures. And that actually is a good news for Jared Goff, who's on the other side of the coin. This one for the Detroit Lions. Against zone coverage, he's thrown for 2,800 of his 4,500 yards this season has been against zone coverage, and he's done pretty well. The only downside is he's also thrown 10 interceptions, so it's going to be a key as to whether or not he's able to pick up the zone coverage the way he did in the game against Denver this season, and he put up big numbers. However, he's missing a key weapon. Sam Porter is not playing in this game. He's going to be out for a couple of weeks, so that is going to.
Laporta is optimistic about playing, by the way. He's done very well in practice this week. It was a bad injury, but I do feel like
he's a game time decision. I'll put it at that. It's a game time decision. So I'll say that. But this is of all the playoff games, this is the game that probably has the most likeliness to be a shootout. The Lions defense has been bend but don't break all season, even though they haven't given up more than 20 points a game over the last month. The Rams defense, while they still have Aaron Donald, play a lot of zone coverage and give up a lot of yards as well. This is don't be surprised if this is a game where both teams are scoring in the late 20s, maybe even like a 38-35 shootout game. I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. I mean, both these quarterbacks have been playing very, very well. Jared Goff, however, is susceptible to having that game when he's throwing some mind-numbing interceptions and some questionable decision making. Also, Matthew Stafford, he's a guy who, if you could get to him, he's a stasher. He's not going anywhere. So it's going to be a matter of which defense can actually get a key stop down the stretch in this game. Because I can't see a situation where both quarterbacks throw for 300 yards and it comes down to last possession wins.
I love this game a lot just because the offensive schemes are really similar. And I love the fact that you have two coaches that just really just throw caution to the wind. Someone's gonna fuck up.
Very emotional coaches at that, by the way.
Someone's gonna fuck up on Monday, and we're gonna talk about it. That's all I'm gonna say, coaching wise. And me and Jen, you and I talked about the Laporta injury, and you said it perfectly. This is how Dan Campbell coaches. Well, bit him in the ass over here, but this is why Dan Campbell is led this team to a 12-5 record. So I'm very interested in this game, and I feel like that's also going to be the best crowd. out of
Yeah.
any of the 6 on wildcard weekends.
And I got to tell you, it's probably the only game that outside of the Steelers game that I'm really looking forward to the pregame introductions, because I just because I want to see just how heartwarming the reception that Matthew Stafford is going to get from the Lions faithful. That man is still beloved in Detroit. No one holds him leaving against him, because they knew that at that point
He needed a Super Bowl. He was waiting for a
wasn't
championship.
going to get to a Super Bowl anytime soon in Detroit. I guarantee you, when his career is over, there's going to be a statue of him outside of Ford Field.
Every record is going to be. It's such an intriguing matchup. I'm very excited to see it. All right. On the opposite end, sorry, Jay. Finally, the 4th-seeded Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 9-8, and winners of the NFC South for a 3rd consecutive year. And by rules, someone does have to win the NFC South. So, congratulations, you are contractually obligated to do that, Bucks. The Bucks are led by Baker Mayfield, rising back from basically the NFL depths of hell of backups, and they're going to host the 5th-seeded defending NFC champion, the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles are banged up everywhere. They finished their season losing 5 of their last 6 and lost games in that stretch to teams that we're not seeing on this weekend: Seattle, Arizona, and the New York Giants. Their previous matchup was way back in week 3, also on a Monday night, by the way. 25-11 win for Philadelphia. Not a score got me. Sorry about that. Jay, welcome to the Desperate Bowl. Give me a matchup to watch here.
It's got to be Baker Mayfield versus a very vulnerable Eagles defense led by Matt Patricia. If you pulled a Rip Van Winkle after Thanksgiving weekend, slept through the month of December, and just woke up now, you're probably very surprised that the defending NFC champs 10-1 start became that 1-5 finish, and that they not only did not hold on to the NFC's number 1 seed, they didn't even win their own division. You're probably also struggling to accept that a Tampa Bay Buccaneers team that was 4-7 before your nap closed the season on a 5-1 run to take the NFC South, and will be, as Rabbi said, hosting the Eagles in Monday night's wildcard weekend finale. Tampa Bay's offense has been trending upwards, while Philly's defense has been trending in the opposite direction. Hence, this is the matchup that could very well determine the game. Let's start with the Bucs. How are they here? Well, as Rabbi alluded to in his intro, the Baker Mayfield Reclamation Project has been a resounding success. The 2017 Heisman Trophy winner and 2018 Offensive Rookie of the Year runner-up had the best season of his career in Dave Canales' offense, completing a career-high 64.3% of his passes for a career-high 4,044 yards, a 7.1 yards per attempt, right at the NFL average, with a career-high 28 touchdowns against only 10 interceptions and a career-high 94.6 passer rating. He also had a career-best 74.9% on-target rate and a career-low 14.8% bad throw rate. You guys seeing a theme here? It helped that he was under pressure on a career-low 17.6% of his dropbacks. The Bucs found an offensive style of football that carried them into a 4-game winning streak after Thanksgiving, prior to their Week 17 loss to the Saints and their uninspiring 9-0 win over the Panthers in Week 18. During that win streak, particularly in wins over the Packers and the Jaguars, they were able to sustain drives and score consistently on offense, averaging 28.5 points per game. Mayfield was at his best during that streak, completing 62.8% of his passes, averaging 252 passing yards per game, 8.4 yards per attempt, 9 touchdowns against just 1 pick with a 110.6 passer rating. The win over Green Bay, easily his best of the year, completed 78.6% of his passes, a season-high 381 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks, and a perfect 158.3 passer rating. The question is, which Bucs offense will show up? On paper, this offense is dangerous, along with Mayfield's career year, both starting wide receivers, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, topped 75 catches and 1,000 yards. Evans caught 13 of Mayfield's 28 touchdowns. Running back Rachaad White put up 1,539 yards from scrimmage, 990 on the ground, 549 receiving. 9 total touchdowns. But this same offense managed just 11 points per game in week 17 and 18, and the self-inflicted wounds with penalties, drops, and fumbles that they experienced earlier in the season once again reared their collective ugly head. They're number 10 in third down conversion percentage, but number 30 in red zone touchdown percentage. Go figure. Look, it's real easy to say that the only reason the Bucs are here is because, as Rabbi said, the NFC South is the worst division in football. It's the only division where the winner won less than 10 games, and the Bucs are only here due to a better conference record than the also 9-8 Saints. They had the lowest point total and worst point differential of all the division winners in the NFL. They're nowhere near being the most efficient offense in the NFL from down to down, but they have shown that they can make some splash plays when they need to. And against a reeling Eagles defense, even with Mayfield dealing with a rib injury that could affect his ability to throw, that may just be enough to get a wild card win. A couple of splash plays from the defense couldn't hurt, specifically from safety Antoine Winfield Jr., who's forced 6 fumbles, picked off 3 passes, recorded 6 sacks. Not to mention he also has the number 1 run-stop win rate among all defensive backs with at least 50 qualifying plays. Let's now talk about the defending NFC champion Eagles, shall we?
Not done? Oh, no. I thought it was about to go on the next segment. Oh.
Talk about a Jekyll and Hyde season by the defending NFC champs, and the struggles of their defense has not helped. We all remember how dominant that defense was last season. They allowed the fewest passing yards. Their 70 sacks and 52.7 pass rush win rate both led the NFL. They had the second best pressure rate in the league and held quarterbacks to the third lowest passer rating. This season, not so much with the dominance. They've allowed the second most passing yards. Their pass rush win rate of 47.4% is 6th, but their 43 sacks are 20th. Their pressure rate is 13th, and quarterbacks have the 4th highest passer rating against them. This from a pass rush group that returned Hassan Reddick, Josh Sweat, and Brandon Graham, and added Nolan Smith in the first round of the draft. They've also allowed the second most touchdown passes and the 4th most explosive passing plays, any play of 16 yards or more. 96. The touchdown passes, 35. The switch from Sean Desai to Matt Patricia as the defensive play caller has not led to the desired turnaround as the Eagles head into the playoffs. They struggle on third down in the red zone, and unless there's some major improvement, Philadelphia could very well be a postseason one and done. Like Desai, Patricia has dropped the team's edge rushers into coverage, but he's done it with greater frequency than Desai did in general, especially over the final 3 regular season games, and it has not been working. Patricia thought that showing offenses that look would create advantages for the Eagles defense. Wasn't an original idea. Reddick, Smith, Graham, and Sweat had all lined up as off-the-ball linebackers in the box or in the slot while Desai was still calling the defense. Patricia has just positioned Reddick, Smith, Graham off the ball 9.4% of the combined snaps. That's more than 4 times the 2.3% that Desai employed the look, according to Pro Football Focus, although Patricia has kept Sweat along the line of scrimmage for all 140 of his snaps. Patricia's reasoning was that if he moved some of his edge rushers around, it would slow down the opponent's process a little bit. He thought he could catch offenses in a bad mismatch, maybe catch a free runner coming through. So far, not so much, especially in the last 2 games against the Cardinals and Giants, who made the Eagles defense pay when they showed that look. Putting edge rushers in coverage to help a suspect secondary takes those edge rushers, who are the primary sack leaders, away from what they do best and puts them in positions where they're vulnerable. Opposing quarterbacks are 15 of 21, 71.4% completion for 109 yards and a touchdown with 0 sacks when Reddick, Sweat, Graham, or Smith have dropped back into coverage, under Patricia, according to True Media Next Gen Stats. I just don't see how you rationalize taking Reddick, Philly's sack leader with 11, and dropping him into coverage a season-high 7 times against the Cardinals, and thus taking him away from what he does best and what he gets paid to do, hunt quarterbacks. Kyler Murray was 8 for 8 for 50 yards and a touchdown on dropbacks where Reddick, Sweat, Graham, or Smith were dropped into coverage. It also makes no sense to do it against the Cardinals offense that averaged 129.2 yards per game rushing and wasn't overly prone to passing even with Murray back. He was only averaging a tick under 225 yards a game passing. The fact that Patricia continued to employ the scheme and then admitted post-game that Arizona caught him in between as a play caller and he struggled to find a way to seize an advantage with the look leaves me with a serious cause for concern. I've never been a fan of Patricia as a coach, play caller, what have you. He thinks he's the smartest guy in the room and is very much of the my scheme philosophy. The Eagles team that will face the Bucs on Monday night is not the same Eagles team that beat the Bucs in week 3. The Bucks team that they beat is not the same team that'll line up against them. If Patricia stubbornly sticks to his scheme, even if it's not working as he envisions, believing that eventually it will, then it won't matter how talented those pass rushes are or how well cornerbacks Darius Slay and James Bradbury cover Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. The Eagles will be going home, especially if Jalen Hurts, whose passer rating during Philadelphia's 1-5 skid was 77.6 with as many picks, 5, as scores, 5, and the offense continues to struggle getting the ball to A.J. Brown. Yeah. Not going to go their way.
And AJ Brown's injured too. I got injured in that Week 18 game, in the game that the Eagles thought we'll try to win, and then probably should never have tried to do anything because
Is
they
it confirmed that he's going to miss the game on Monday night?
He's also a game time decision. Did not practice on Thursday. I think in win or go home games, I think if it's always 50-50, you're always going to lean on the side of he's going to go. But the only thing I'm just going to say is, even if the Eagles win this game, and I think they probably should because they have a more talented team, but if the Eagles win this game, I just don't see them winning another one. And that's the thing. I don't see it either for the Bucs. So this is why this game, not a fan of it, but we'll see what happens. You have to have a 4 or 5 games somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, even the game that the Eagles won against the Giants on Christmas Day,
they should have lost.
They did not look good at all. That was a sheer loss.
They could have easily lost it too. It's going to be interesting, but nothing good lasts forever. And as Joe said before, a lot of the same players, two new coordinators. This is what you got sometimes. Yep. All right. 4 years after speaking of, we were talking about Matt Patricia. Here we go again with the great segues of the night. 4 years after the New England Patriots saw the greatest quarterback of all time leave Foxborough, it's time for what some would call the greatest coaching goat of all time in the profession, Bill Belichick, to leave as well. Unlike Brady, though, I mean, Brady wasn't retired anyway. It's not a retirement, it's straight up parting of ways. Any other team manages to get Bill in the offseason, I think one will. This is what they get. 6 Super Bowls, 9 Super Bowl appearances, 13 AFC Championship appearances, and 333 regular season victories, 266 coming with New England. And also 0 smiles during press conferences. I know that is a fact. I went to footballreference.com. All right, Anthony, I get to do the praising. Now, tell me what went wrong if you want to. Was it the 83-104 record Bill had with Tom Brady, with Tom Brady not starting? Or was it the 29-39 record that Belichick had in the season since Brady left? What do you see here?
I'll say this. He's not off to Cincinnati after this week. So we'll put that. We'll just put that. We'll just put that once.
It's not open for a job, unfortunately.
Yeah, we'll just put that to the side. The legacy he's leaving behind is really something of a mixed bag. I mean, you think about the success on the football field, 31 playoff wins, 17 division titles, obviously the Super Bowls. And you talk about, and I know there's a lot of people that tie his success so much into Tom Brady, but there was a couple of seasons just 2 years ago where Mac Jones, at quarterback, getting the Patriots back to the playoffs after a 1-year absence. You think about 2008 when Tom Brady was done for the year after one game because of knee injury. They went 11-5, and they won, and they just barely missed the playoffs. I hate to bring this bad memory up, Jay, but in 2001, they go into Heinz Field. They beat the Steelers in the AFC title game with Drew Bledsoe coming off the bench and playing the second half of the game because Tom Brady was knocked out of the game in the first half. So there's been plenty of moments where Bill Belichick has shown what a great head coach he's been. We forget his time with the Cleveland Browns. And yeah, Nick Saban, who we're going to talk about as our closer, was on that coaching staff and getting the Cleveland Browns back to the playoffs in '94. I mean, there's been plenty of instances where Belichick has shown what an amazing head coach he is. But then there's been the controversies too. I mean, the very short tenure he had as a head coach to the Jets. It literally lasted, a couple of hours before he was a coach of the New England, coach of the New England Patriots. There was Spygate, that dogged the Patriots all through the 2007 season as they went almost unbeaten. There was some questionable moments like 4th and 2 inside deep in your own territory on Sunday Night Football against Indianapolis. There was Deflategate. There was there was the questionable player personnel decisions. Remember, he cut Lawyer Lloyd literally before the opening game of the 2003 season, who ends up going to Buffalo, and we all know what happens that game, 31-0. Um, I mean, there's been some ups and downs quite a bit. I mean, his coaching resume, and that's not going to be questioned. But when you look into this season, in particular, of course, Jay, you're going to get more into it. It just seems like the Patriot way kind of ran its course a little bit. I mean, yes, there were plenty of injuries that played a part of it. But it just seems like this team just did not respond whatsoever to Bill Belichick. And it reminded me of Tom Landry's last couple of years as the coach of the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, he was the legend that had been around for so long, but by the time when Jerry Jones took over, by the time Jerry Jones brought the team, the Cowboys was on the down end, was on a tailspin. I mean, Danny White, he had some good success where it was gone, and the team was definitely going to rebuild, but it has shown that the message just wasn't getting across anymore, and they had to make a change. And you kind of see this here, where while the split is admissible, of course, the Patriots as an organization, I think they felt like that this was coming after last season. It might have been we go back to the 2020 season, at the first year after Tom Brady left, that the end was getting near and maybe getting back to the playoffs bought him some time, but this was coming. And both sides able to kind of, bid adieu to each other. But, just a question of whether or not Belichick still wants to coach. I mean, there's obviously a lot of coaching positions available. Does he take some time off? Does he go into retirement? We said earlier in the show we can't see him going back to being a coordinator, obviously. Yeah. But there's definitely some question marks that are going to need to be addressed in the next coming days and even weeks. What is the future of Bill Belichick at 72 years old and more than 4 decades as a coach in some capacity in the National Football League?
But as you said before, and Jay, we'll talk about this in a second, he didn't have the groceries anymore really to cook. As Bill Parcells said, you need to shop for the groceries. And Jay, take it whichever way you want, whether it be Belichick the coach, Belichick the decision maker, or even Belichick the general manager. It just didn't work towards the end of his tenure in New England.
No, I'm actually going to touch on all of that, and bear it with me, guys, because this is going to be one hell of a rant.
Oh, Jesus.
Look,
Sitting down now for this.
When it's all said and done, for good, not just here in New England, Bill Belichick will likely go into Canton as the NFL's history books as the greatest coach in the league's history. His pairing with Tom Brady, hands down, greatest coach-quarterback pairing ever. They led the Patriots to 19 consecutive winning seasons, 17 divisional titles, 9 AFC championships, 6 Super Bowl titles. Belichick had a ridiculous 266 and 121 regular season record with the Patriots. That's a 687 winning percentage. And as Anthony referenced, 31 postseason wins, most by any head coach in NFL history, 30 of those coming in New England. With Brady as his quarterback, Belichick and the Patriots never finished below 500. Since Brady left, they've been under 500 3 times, going 29 and 38 overall. They made one playoff appearance in those 4 seasons since Brady left, and they got blown out by the Bills 47-17 in an AFC wildcard game. The Patriots haven't won a playoff game since Super Bowl 53. Now, look, New England started this season 2-10, losing 5 straight at one point, and finished the season averaging 13.9 points per game, tied for the worst in the NFL. It was a straw that I think finally broke Robert Kraft's back, but things started to go south for Belichick almost from the moment Brady left for Tampa Bay, as you noted, Anthony. A decade of mediocre to bad drafts and roster decisions finally caught up to Belichick without Brady around to cover up mistakes by management, namely Belichick, who is the only head coach in the NFL with complete control over his team's draft and roster. He had no GM working alongside him. In fact, very few people in the organization could even make the smallest of suggestions to Belichick on any football matter. Patriots scouts would spend years getting to know prospects. That didn't matter once Belichick started his prep for the draft. He seemingly overruled any of their reports and went his own way. It also didn't help that many of the coaches and front office personnel that Belichick actually trusted and might have listened to on football matters left or retired in recent years. Josh McDaniels, Brian Flores, Dante Scarnecchia, Ivan Fears, Ernie Adams, Nick Caserio, Dave Ziegler, and Monty Ossenfort. Between them, they had 132 years of collective experience with Belichick, and all of it left the building as they did. And once they were gone, an already reclusive coach became even more so. It's a huge reason why the roster just flat out fell apart in the years after Brady. Belichick's leadership style, which Anthony touched on a little bit, is the complete opposite of what NFL owners have looked for in recent years. The other successful organizations, such as those with members of the Shanahan-McVay coaching tree, have done so with collaboration as the primary tenet. Players working with coaches rather than for them. Now, most folks inside the Patriots organization believe that the game has not passed Belichick by. They say he still knows how to coach, still loves to teach, and still knows how to build a game plan as well as anyone. Even in this horrible 2023 season, his defensive schemes wreaked havoc with opposing defenses. It's the way he's gone about organizational structure, roster construction, and the methods he uses to lead a team that are outdated and have allowed the rest of the NFL to pass the Patriots by. Belichick was always willing to change on the football field, trying different schemes and styles, but he's refused to change who he is or how he operates. And one of the biggest negatives regarding that leadership style was that Belichick couldn't or simply wouldn't relate to the younger players on the team who are 2 generations younger than the 72-year-old coach. Belichick's always been miserly with praise, even with Brady, which he finally got fed up with. Having grown up in a military environment, Belichick was the type to give orders, not explanation. To him, you got your recognition with your paycheck, not a pat on the back from the coach. Add to that, as the years passed, there were fewer connections to the Brady-era Super Bowl winning teams in the locker room, which meant fewer veterans to vouch for the fact that all the tough moments with Belichick would be worth it. The biggest example of Belichick's refusal to change who he is and how he does things is quarterback Mac Jones. In a league where if you get the QB1 position wrong, it can set you back 5 years at the minimum. What Belichick did to Jones, to use military terms he'd understand, was conduct unbecoming, and his culpable negligence broke a quarterback who had a very promising future. Jones was runner-up for Offensive Rookie of the Year and made the Pro Bowl after his rookie season in which he led the Patriots to the playoffs. But after they lost in the wildcard round, offensive coordinator Josh McDaniels, who was instrumental to the success Jones had, left to become the head coach of the Raiders. And every decision Belichick made with regards to his offense in general and Jones specifically from that point forward ruined what should have been a great start to a really good career. Jones's growth as a quarterback was stunted in 2022 by Belichick's decision to replace McDaniels with, here's this guy again, Matt Patricia, a former defensive coordinator, as primary play caller, and Joe Judge, a former special teams coordinator, as the quarterback coach. Neither of these guys had ever run an NFL offense, which led to Jones taking several steps backwards in his development. And yet, even after that disaster, Belichick was convinced that everything could be fixed with better and more intentional coaching, so he didn't overhaul a roster that needed obvious help, especially at the offensive playmaking positions. That led to this season's 4-13 record, where the Patriots had a worse roster than their opponents in just about every game. How could someone who spent 2 decades with arguably the greatest quarterback of all time think he could win with simply average play from the game's most important position? Under Patricia and Judge, Jones's game completely disintegrated. His confidence was severely shaken. His numbers dropped. 22 touchdowns, 7.3 yards per attempt, and a 92.5 passer rating in his rookie season to 14 scores, 6.8 yards per attempt, and an 84.8 passer rating in his second year. Jones was frustrated with the coaching he was getting and sought outside opinions, which apparently angered Belichick. And what I can only ascribe to a combination of arrogance, ego, and pettiness, Belichick went out of his way to avoid any positive remarks about Jones after the season. And in the season, the offseason, or at any point during this season, instead of recognizing that his young quarterback could use some building up for a bounce-back year, Belichick couldn't get over what he felt was disrespect by Jones to his coaching by seeking opinions from outside the building and complaining openly on the field. Belichick did bring in a legitimate offensive coordinator in Bill O'Brien, but he didn't upgrade that side of the ball. He used his top 3 draft picks for defense, his side of the ball. He figured that if he stopped the run and had elite special teams, this is a guy who has 7 players dedicated just to special teams. He could get the Patriots back to prominence in an NFL that emphasizes the passing game. He didn't draft an offensive player until the 107th pick in the draft, a guard who no one remembers because he only played 13 offensive snaps this year. The only meaningful free agent he signed was wide receiver Juju Smith-Schuster, a veteran slot receiver with injury issues. The former Steeler struggled from the jump. He wound up with only 260 receiving yards in 11 games in the first year of a contract that guaranteed him $16 million. Talk about a complete swing and miss by Belichick, the roster builder. He had a chance to get DeAndre Hopkins, but didn't think he was worth the $13 million the Titans gave him, so another season passed without a 1,000-yard receiver in Foxborough. No Patriot wide receiver has had topped 1,000 yards since Julian Edelman in 2019. In March, when asked if Jones would be the starting quarterback in 2023, Belichick answered about as vaguely as even he could be. Everyone will get a chance to play. Jones is a first-round pick who is expected to be the next franchise quarterback, and just 2 years later, Belichick couldn't be bothered to confirm that he was the starter. Once again, Belichick refused to build up Jones with further damage to the confidence of an already shaken quarterback. Add to that a shaky offensive line and wide receivers who struggled to create separation. And the struggles Jones had in 2022 got even worse. His mechanics fell apart. He didn't trust his reads, and he panicked under pressure. He finished the season with his career-low 77 passer rating, career-low 6.1 yards per attempt, career lows in 10 with touchdowns with 10, and his first negative touchdown to interception ratio, 12 picks. And now it seems like he's likely to head somewhere else in the offseason. The reason the Patriots organization is in this dire state of disarray, both on the field and in the front office, is because Bill Belichick stubbornly, arrogantly, vindictively refused to change with the times with regards to everything other than defensive X's and O's. His legacy may have been secured a long time ago, but it seems like we have to go that far back to remember why he was considered the best to ever stalk the sidelines. The version of Bill Belichick that parted ways with the New England Patriots is a shadow of the Super Bowl winning coach we now only see on NFL films.
Do you think it's a good rant. I do disagree with you on the fact of not praising Jones, because that's literally how Belichick talks all the time to the press. You can't teach a 72-year-old new dog new tricks. By the way, fun fact about everything. The oldest coach in the league and the second oldest coach in the league gone in 2 days, making it. And if you look, I was actually looking at the ages, the oldest coaches now out there. And it's interesting to see, because you'd say like old school and stuff like that. Andy Reid, fun-loving guy, a guy who always had a different way of saying. John Harbaugh, same thing. Mike McCarthy, 2 out of 3. And Todd Bowles is actually now number 4 on that list at 60 years old. And then Sean Payton again.
Rabbi, who's about to become the longest tenured head coach in the NFL?
Mike Tomlin, of course, is. Well, thank you for the dap on that one. But a lot of interesting things. And I want to get to our final segment, but I'm very interested to see who ends up hiring, first of all, Bill Belichick. I think he will get hired because there's 8 coaching vacancies out there. But the question is, will Belichick accept the fact that he is going to have a GM? Yeah. And that's going to be the tough question out there. And I don't think we know the answer at all. Because I think if he doesn't want to accept that, he's not going to be coaching next year.
No.
And he might be fine, with that. We have no idea what the situation that is.
I tell you, Rabbi, I think the only owner who would be dumb enough to give Bill Belichick the same level of control that he has in New England is David Tepper. in Carolina.
Yeah, I know, but we know Tepper's an idiot, but I do. I also think Arthur Blank would also be that much of an idiot, but he has no. Uh, can I get to my point now since it's already 11:56 here? I think Mike Vrabel is really the only person who can coach this team. And yes, I understand him being in that Hall of Fame ceremony back in October and not really denying any of the rumors of him becoming Titans head coach, of becoming the next Patriots head coach, pissed off their owner to all end. But even in November, he was perfectly fine with saying, I'm still okay with this coach. And then all of a sudden, one overtime loss against the Texans, and it's like, you know what, get her out of here. There was just no unresolved feelings in that. And for me, I think Vrabel is the guy who just teaches the Patriot way. I know there's not a lot of people out there, and one of the only coaches to succeed in the NFL under Bill Belichick, when he left Bill Belichick, is Mike Vrabel. You want to go Gerard Mayo, you perfectly can go fine. But that immediately goes back to what you said before, Jay. This team needs an offensive guy. I know Vrabel is a defensive guy, but it needs more of a progressive guy to coach this team. And yes, Vrabel is an asshole. But Vrabel is a guy who's gotten the most out of what little he's gotten in Tennessee. And I really think that's the way they should go. You'd be fine with Gerard Mayo, but I think you have a big opportunity here to really bring back a legacy in New England that is more modern day.
Yeah, I mean, look, my issue with Vrabel going to New England, and I agree with you. You know, in a vacuum, he is the perfect choice because of all of the guys who have gone into coaching that have any tie to Belichick. None of the guys who coached under Belichick have succeeded because one of the other things that Belichick does not do is actually teach his assistants how to coach to get them ready to be head coaches. Vrabel, as a former player, is the only one who's had any success. Because I don't think he has tried to make himself into Bill Belichick 2.0 like all the rest of them has. The thing with Vrabel and the parting in Tennessee, it wasn't just that Patriots Hall of Fame ceremony. It was comments that he made with regards to the hiring of Rand Carthen as GM. He was not Vrabel's first choice, and comments that he made with regards to his owner, about his owner, that ultimately kind of broke that relationship. Had he not shot himself in the foot or stuck his foot in his mouth with some of those comments, I fully believe Mike Vrabel would still be coaching the Tennessee Titans. But maybe part of the reason he shot his mouth off is because maybe in some back end of his brain, he actually decided he was done and he wanted out. As far as Gerard Mayo, it's going to be interesting because supposedly he had opportunities elsewhere after last season, and a closed-door meeting with Robert Kraft convinced him to stay. And there's a lot of speculation that what happened in that meeting was Robert Kraft saying, look, if we shit the bed again, Bill's going to be gone and this job is yours. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But like I said, purely from a vacuum, Vrabel would be an excellent choice.
By the way, first of all, Vrabel's first choice as GM was Ryan Cowden, who is now currently with the Giants, and just a lot of misunderstandings here too.
Vrabel didn't want Robinson fired as GM either, so that kind of rankled him.
Yeah, and apparently this was Adams' decision 100%. It didn't even get to Carthon's desk, and I'm not happy with an owner taking too much of that responsibility in her hands.
I mean, it's within their right.
It is within their right, but there's
to
a
me,
lot of
it was done less for football reasons and more for
personal
personality clashing reasons.
And it could be fine. It could be just an irreconcilable differences situation, but You need to work on your marriage if you're going to continue on as a
Agreed.
coach, and you need to stop doing stuff like that. That's just me. All right. One day earlier, in what had to be a planned deal, there had to be a boardroom meeting that said, "You retire this day, I'll retire the next day." They're good friends. They literally always win championships at the
Man.
same time. But I'm convinced of it. That definitely happened. Nick Saban, now former Alabama coach, shockingly decided to call it a career on Wednesday.
Wow.
This is a retirement, although there are 8 coaching vacancies in the NFL. But let's face it, Saban's
No,
not
he's more likely to end up on ESPN than he is to end up on an NFL sideline.
It's interesting. Saban actually just retired due to the grind of coaching, and the guy just made a CFP semifinal and probably was the second best team, by the way, in that CFP semifinal. So you would never have known it. So we begin with Anthony. After 292 wins in his college career, 11 SEC championships, and 7 times finishing the season on top. There's a split national championship in there too, with another guy who left this week, and Pete Carroll. He got let go. We'll talk about that another time. Anyway, the man who will be as synonymous with Alabama football, probably, it's him and Bear Bryant.
There you
It's
go.
him and Bear Bryant, and it's honestly 50-50. I was gonna say more than Bear Bryant, but I really think it's a 50-50. It's so close.
Yeah, you know what?
You'll get arguments in Tuscaloosa about what
You'll
that
get arguments, but
percentage
it's
is.
still pretty close. Anthony, what a legacy.
Yeah. Well, I had somebody who's been around Tuscaloosa a couple of times. I could say it's definitely 50-50. Nick Saban in 17 seasons with Alabama won over won 201 games. Obviously, you mentioned Bill Bryant. He won 232 games in 25 seasons. So and Bill Bryant, 13 SEC championships and 6 national titles. Saban, 9 conference championships, 6 more national championships. So that's why it's the 50-50 split that I'm talking about. But you think about this, in 28 years as a head coach, Nick Saban has never had a losing season. I had to really look this up. He is literally the time he's had a losing season was not in college. It was his 2 seasons as head coach of the Miami Dolphins in the NFL. But in college, he has never had a losing season. He's only had 2 years with Michigan State early in his coaching career when he finished at 500, 1996 and 1998. We forget, and he was successful at LSU as well for 5 seasons, from 2000 to 2004 when he went 48-16. But
and he won a national title in 03.
Yes, and but it is his time with the Alabama Crimson Tide that that pretty much cemented his legacy. And look at all the players in the NFL, even past or present, that's in the NFL now, went through Alabama. You think of Calvin Ridley, you think of Tua, you think of Derrick Henry, that we talked about earlier in this show. Just to name some people off the top of my head. Nick Saban, I think when you talk about his legacy, it's just that is he is going down as one of the greatest coaches in college football history. His recruiting that it seemed like every year Alabama was in the top 5 in the recruiting class. He brought the Crimson Tide back to the national stage at dominance after they had some lean years, obviously, and being an afterthought in the SEC. And you think about it, he won college football playoffs. He's won the bowl championship series in the BCS. And you saw, and even going out, he went out with one plane with a chance to go to the national championship game. I mean you think about this Alabama team this season, probably one of the least talented teams he had during his 17 seasons, and was still able to win a SEC championship game and to get back to the national semifinals. So, um, Nick Saban, this is retirement. He's pretty much more than earned it. I mean, you can just see that the grind finally took his toll. He was worn down, but you saw that the post game embrace between him and his wife. I think he knew that was the end of the line, regardless if it led to a national championship or if it led to the Crimson Tide coming short. I think he had his mind made up even before that game that this is going to be one last run, and you tip your hat to him. I know, look, we're not Crimson Tide fans by no means on this panel, but you have to give credit where it's due. And what Saban has done in the 17 years he's done with the Crimson Tide, and obviously his whole coaching career, going back to his days with Toledo, has been nothing short of spectacular. And he has definitely left this mark, and it's going to be very, hey, look, it's going to be a very tough act to follow whoever takes over as head coach in Tuscaloosa, because it's just the if Bill Bryant left was the gold standard, Nick Saban is definitely a 1A or even a B in this case, depending on how your bias is as far as great head coaches. And like I said, you tip your hat to him, but good luck to whoever's gonna follow that act.
There were so many times after Bear Bryant's time was done that they were looking for the next Bear Bryant. You had people like Mike Sherman, Mike Shula coaching in between the Bear Bryant years. I mean, Gene Stallings was probably the last decent Alabama coach. And it took a long time, but when Saban came back, they almost went right back into prominence and have really become one of the best or one of the biggest college football franchises out there, Jay. Only second to Michigan in wins. So it's a tough act to follow. And this is a guy who over the years did actually adapt to the times. And again, it's shocking because I feel like he could have easily coached another 4 or 5.
Yeah, this was a complete shock to me. I wouldn't have believed it even if a plane from Tuscaloosa flew over my house with a banner saying so. 17 years at Alabama, 6 titles, 7 total, including the one at LSU, those 11 SEC championships, 9 with the Tide, 2 in Baton Rouge. During the most competitive era of any conference in the 154-year history of college football. He had a team ranked number 1 at least once during all but 2 of those seasons. He won more games in 17 seasons at Alabama, 201, than the Crimson Tide won in the 24 seasons between the legendary Bear Bryant's retirement and Saban's hiring. That was just 171 wins. Saban has coached 4 Heisman winners: Bryce Young in 21, Devonta Smith in 20, Derrick Henry in 15, Mark Ingram in 09. That's more than anyone else. Alabama had 0 Heisman winners before he arrived. 5-time SEC Coach of the Year, 2-time Walter Camp Coach of the Year, 2-time AP College Football Coach of the Year, and 2-time Paul Bear Bryant winner, among other numerous accolades. Since he arrived in Tuscaloosa in 2007, no school has had more first-round NFL draft picks than Alabama, 44, and that number will grow in April when the 2024 NFL draft happens. Overall, 123 of Saban's Alabama players have been drafted by NFL teams. Think about this, guys. In Bryant's last national championship season in Alabama in 1979, the Tide went 12-0. They beat number 18 Tennessee and number 14 Auburn in the regular season and number 6 Arkansas in the Sugar Bowl. This season, the Tide had to win 12 just to reach the CFP, facing the likes of number 15 Ole Miss, number 17 Tennessee, number 14 LSU in the regular season, and in a conference championship game that didn't exist in 1979, number 1 and 2-time defending national champ Georgia, before losing to number 11 Texas in the CFP semis. And this was considered a down season for Saban. And we know he didn't have many while he was at Alabama, because no class he recruited that played 4 years went without winning a national championship. In the other thing about Saban that stands out is his evolution as a coach. And Rabbi, you kind of touched on it. The first half of his time at Alabama was defined by one-back running schemes and powerful offensive lines paired with aggressive and fundamentally sound defenses. Then college football fundamentally changed. air raid and spread offenses and RPOs made their way to the SEC courtesy of coaches like Gus Malzahn, Hugh Freeze, and Kevin Sumlin. Initially, Saban was not a fan. This was not his kind of football. It was not how the Tide should roll. But once he realized there was no going back, he beat those coaches at their own game, starting with hiring a then very radioactive Lane Kiffin as his offensive coordinator in 2014 to modernize his pro-style offense, followed by the likes of Steve Sarkisian and Mike Locksley, as Saban went all in on the spread formations and run-pass option schemes. Most importantly, he began loading up on blue-chip quarterbacks like Jalen Hurts, Tua Tagovailoa, and Bryce Young, along with game-breaking receivers like Devonta Smith, Jerry Jeudy, and Jalen Waddle. Alabama became the gold standard for the modern college football offense. Other coaches may get close to or eventually match Saban in wins, conference titles, or national championships. Others in innovation that may take the game to new heights, but I doubt we'll ever see another coach do all of those things in one career at one place the way Nick Saban did during his time at Alabama. Love him or hate him, college football will be less without him on the sidelines.
Until the 2021 national championship, 21 going into 22, nobody had ever beaten Nick Saban who coached under him. No assistant had ever beaten Nick Saban until Kirby Smart. That's an accomplishment unto itself. It's kind of the good saying of, I taught you everything that you know, but I didn't teach you everything that I know. And
Yep.
it's just amazing. You guys said all about Saban. So there have been three potential candidates that have come to the forefront to possibly replace Saban. Dan Lanning, by the way, who never visited Alabama, by the way, as I had finally found out earlier today.
Oh, really?
Never took a plane over there. That was incorrect. Said no to that job, and he is staying in Oregon. So three names that have come out. The first two are names that we've seen a lot this year. Kellen DeBoer, who has one of the best records out of anyone. He's won everywhere he goes. In Sioux Falls, when he was part of the Great Plains Athletic Conference, his worst record was 11-2. That was his first season. Then it was 14-0, 13-1, and that's pretty much it. In non-COVID years coaching, his first year coaching was, by the way, in college ranks was in FBS was 2020. Went 9-3 at Florida State, and then he went 25-3 at Washington, a school that hadn't been in the national spotlight for a long time. Would be a great hire, young guy. It works out. Mike Norvell of Florida State has also been a name that has been put around for this. All the stuff that's been going on in Florida State, saw how they did this year. I think it would be a great hire as well. And although Florida State did get hit with some academic violations today, I still think that would be a good fit. Another name that has come out there, and it's an interesting name because he's young and he's part of the Alabama staff, is Tommy Rees, their offensive coordinator. And that's a guy that could be very interesting with the suddenness of this Saban leaving. Some people have already flipped their commitments to Alabama because of that, because one of the best
high school wide receivers in the country actually decommitted from Alabama after the news broke that Saban was retiring.
We didn't even talk about his recruiting. His recruiting is almost always top 1 or 2 or 3 in the country. So Reese could bring that in also. And he brought in a different thing in the offense this year and really helped Jalen Milroe, who's definitely going to be who will be in Alabama next year as a sophomore. So we'll see what happens with that. Another name that I just want to throw out there, I don't think Dabo Swinney's happy with mediocrity at Clemson. I think he feels like he has earned the Alabama job. So let's see if Dabo Swinney gets a call.
Rabbi,
I understand
where you're going.
I feel like it's a possibility of at least giving a call. I hope not.
He may want it, but here's the thing: with his steadfast refusal to utilize the transfer portal, he is, to me, if he goes to Alabama, that would be taking a step back in terms of being at the forefront of doing everything possible to build a winning roster. And I don't think Alabama will go that way.
I don't think they will either, but I always just want to put it out there. I do like the direction that they're going in, though. Going young, going with guys who have hit the transfer portal. We're about to see if Alabama can still, with the name recognition, really top the college football world. I really think Alabama, as long as they can keep it going, in a 12-team playoff will really be something to look at in years to come. I'm very interested to see who fills this spot.
Yeah, but they do need to. It wouldn't surprise me if they don't waste too much time filling.
Oh, they're doing. It's going to be one of those three guys, and it's probably within the next 2 weeks.
It kind of has to be to prevent a mass exodus of players. And
that's why Anthony's point is interesting, because if this was known by Saban, I think he would tell Alabama immediately. Again, man's gonna get a statue in Alabama by far, and I think that would have been the right way to go. But it doesn't seem like that they were ready for this. By the way, I equate this just as much as Coach K leaving Duke. I know Coach K had more of a legacy in Duke in years.
No, it's applicable.
Are the same. But I think it's applicable.
It's very applicable.
And there was no retirement tour for Nick Saban, but I think that's the way he would play it.
Exactly.
All right. For Jay Kaplan and Anthony Strait, and of course we can't forget Joe Tufaro, who brought the heat and made fun of Jay a bunch of times. I'm Steve Rabinowitz. Always good for that. Facebook.com, YouTube.com, both with the backslash of @OnTheSportsLines, and we can give you what you want for your sports picks this January and February. And we can give you more Michigan homerism. Speaking of Michigan homerism, that'd be you.
That would be me? What are you talking about?
Speaking of Michigan homerism,
I'm Jay Kaplan, and our Twitter handle is @ONTH Sportslines, where you will find a link to this show tomorrow, along with the other interesting tidbits of sports that we feel are worth your time to give a look or give a read. There's a link up there right now to a Weird and Wild NFL Wildcard Edition, courtesy of our pal Jason Stark, who, as I said to him on a direct message on Twitter this morning, hey, if the baseball thing doesn't work out, you might have a future in football. He found that funny. You'll find the article interesting.
Better than a lot of the other football writers out there. All right. By the way, I say Michigan homerism in the nicest possible way, because you definitely deserve this national title.
Thank you, sir.
So,
hail to the victors. Go blue.
All right. The champions of the West will be back next week. For all of us, we'll talk to you next week on the Sports Lines. Good night.
Good night.